the words that I speak.
We need some sweet vermouth next time. Because I can make a mezcal Manhattan, regular Manhattans, old fashions.
Y'all are getting all the fancy drinks?
Well, we don't have the sweet vermouth, but I'm just drinking straight mezcal, so it's like burning my tongue.
Hilarious. Still, that sounds fun. I'd take
You know,
that.
I like my drinks. I don't want a smooth drink, Gabe. You know what I mean? I want to it's like a workout. My drink should be like a little bit like a workout.
I very much understand.
I got the Sexton single make.
Sexton
Single make.
and
the monkey shoulders.
Oh, I've heard the monkey shoulders one a few
And
times.
we mix them together. No, I'm just
Yo, I was like, you didn't.
No, seriously, this stuff is pretty good. I actually like this monkey shoulders stuff. It's pretty good.
I've had a bunch of
And then
people recommend it.
And then, of course,
Yeah,
a pumpkin
it just doesn't
shipyard.
fit in there, though, bro.
You're like,
This
that's just
podcast was
wrong.
brought to you by Pumpkin Shipyard. No, I'm just kidding. It really wasn't, though.
If only.
Watch us get sued.
Oh,
Right.
Oh, let's not. Oh God,
No,
that
we
nightmares.
love Shipyard. There it is.
We just
All
toasted.
right. We did. So, how you guys doing?
Good, Cody. How are you?
It's been a crazy week. So last week, not last week, but last week since the upload
wow.
last week, we actually Gabe and I had a friend that called me out of the blue about suicide.
Wow.
As in, like, this person, I won't for anonymous purposes. This person was suicidal,
Wow.
and so we're getting this person some help. We have I've got a friend over at my church that basically is just going to help out in a big way because my friend has gone through a lot as well.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
and it's just so weird that came. I haven't talked to this person in probably 8 years.
Is that right? Wow.
That's what's so nuts
Did
about
she
it.
watch the podcast or?
She didn't watch the podcast, but she it was just crazy timing because I
Yeah.
mean I don't have some kind of big movement for suicide.
right, yeah.
You know, it's not like I have people calling me
right.
about that.
Right. No.
Like, but it was crazy. So I'm in the middle of working and all of a sudden I get the call from this person and now she's just like crying. I'm trying to remember who she was for a second because it's literally been 8 years.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, and
Wow.
the other crazy thing is that her number showed up as one of my other friends' phone numbers. So I answered the phone because of that. So if she had a number that I didn't know,
Yeah.
then I probably never would have answered the phone. I would have thought that it was like a robo-killer caller because I get like so many of those. But it was one of my other friends, and I'm like, oh, it's that person. So I answered the phone being funny. Turns out it wasn't her. She just happened to have her phone number, her old phone number, which is insane, you know?
Yep.
And so, anyways, she corrects me, tells me who she is, and I'm just like, holy crap, I haven't seen you in literally like 8 years. And yeah, and then she's bawling her eyes out, and dude, I'll save you the whole long conversation, but overall, she was ready to kill herself. Actually, she claims that she's been trying to kill herself for years, but has not been successful with it. And I don't know. So anyways, the first thing that came to my mind was obviously I want to call Gabe because Gabe obviously can be more relatable with her than I could because I've never experienced suicide. And Gabe so beautifully went through a whole bunch of great questions, talked with, with her about some beautiful, beautiful things. And so I got a friend who, this person also, she struggles with alcoholism, and that's just kind of been her painkiller, if you will.
Of course.
And
yeah.
so my
It works
friend, so
temporarily,
I
right?
call at my church, and the person who answers the phone at my church says that she struggled with, or she's been sober 6 years.
Wow.
And so, and I'm just like, that's, so I'm like, well, that's perfect. I mean, because that's, and then she's like, well, I want to sponsor this girl.
Unbelievable.
And I'm like, oh, that's amazing. So that's perfect. So that's what's happening. I think is I'm going to connect those two together, and
Awesome.
she's going to go through the
That is good
motions.
stuff, man.
So I want to chime in to kind of go right off of what you just said. And I know we just talked a lot about suicide in the last one, so I just want to touch on it. I started writing. We talk about source and Christianity a little on this podcast. Some of you guys listening may know I used to be Christian. I kind of stepped away from that, and I talk a lot about source. So, but like for me, I was told by source a year ago that I need to start writing every day. And when the day that our friend called, and then Cody called me with suicide. That was a really hard day for me to write about, as you can imagine, just because my own personal journey with that. And can I read you guys what I wrote? I haven't posted this
Dude,
anywhere
yeah.
yet. I plan on
Yes,
it.
please, read it.
And I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on this. And this became very, very real to me. It was really, it was interesting. Recently, a friend called me and said she was suicidal. We spent an hour on the phone. We talked about the abuse that she had gone through, how her friends and family pretended like nothing happened, exactly how she planned to commit suicide. All of this brought me back to when I was contemplating suicide myself. Like her, I had gone through the intense abuse that lasted years. Like her, I didn't have friends and family I could talk to about it. And like her, I had planned out exactly how I was going to take my life. Honestly, this was a really difficult conversation for me. But afterwards, I realized something. Often we contemplate suicide not because we want to die, but because we want something to change. Our circumstances, our emotions, our thoughts, our behaviors, others' behaviors, the pain. We feel alone, abandoned. Our life seems to be a never-ending cycle of hopelessness, helplessness, and despair. And no matter how much we try, we can't seem to escape it. So in other words, the goal isn't death. The goal isn't suicide. The goal is change. The suicide seems to be the only option that provides a guaranteed change. We don't feel like we can take another step. Unlike therapy, exercise, or accountability groups, suicide guarantees an immediate change. If I commit suicide, I won't be in pain. I won't feel alone. I won't be in this situation anymore. And the point of this post is simply to recognize that we can't help someone through suicide until we recognize that suicide isn't an outcome as much as it, or suicide isn't as outcome as much as a means to an outcome. If you want to help someone who's suicidal, don't tell them don't commit suicide. Show them how they can achieve that outcome differently.
Wow. Sounds like a powerful day for you, man.
It was a very powerful day. A lot of eye-opening, a lot of demons to face that day. I'll say that.
Did it kind of trigger those old emotions, or kind of resurface a lot of those feelings?
Exactly. A lot of resurface. Things that I hadn't thought through, hadn't thought about, memories that like I hadn't thought about in years. And like we've all had these situations, right? Something comes up and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, yeah, that's what was going through my head. That's what I was feeling in that moment. That conversation that I had with this girl, that absolutely changed. It brought back so much of these things that I had totally forgot. And it gave me a lot more empathy in the situation, but then also was very hard to be like, okay, yeah, like to admit to like, it felt like to admit a weakness. And just to say like, okay, yeah, this is where I was. There was a point in my life where this is exactly how I felt. And I felt like I couldn't move forward or do it on my own. And no matter what I tried, nothing was helping. It was almost like this weakness that I had been trying to run from for years got put back in my face, which was not pleasant at all, and really a lot to work through. It's a very long day.
Wow.
That's crazy though, Gabe.
Right.
That's wow.
Yeah, that's deep stuff, and that stuff resurfaces, and you've kind of like moved past it, and then it reemerges in your life, and it's kind of like what we talked about last week, where those old brain networks and patterns are still kind of operative. They're probably muted, right, on some level, but they resurface and get energized, and probably pulls you right back in.
Right.
It's intense, man.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Well, how about you, Matt? How's your week been?
Week's been busy. Work's good. Clients are good. Did a lot of work on the book this week. I finished my first draft, and I started listening to. So the next step is like finding a literary agent, and so I did a lot of work with like what literary agents look for, and like what are their red flags when I look at a book.
Yeah.
And so they're pretty pretty well. I mean, they're trying to like they got to make sure this book's not a liability.
Right.
So it really was challenging because I had this idea and so I was listening to literary critics, and I was like, or the agents, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have so much work left to do in the second draft. It's going to be a lot of retooling, a lot of
But the first draft is so.
first draft is good,
So important.
and I'll be able
Yeah.
to kind of like piece stuff together.
How many words are in this book?
I think this right now it's like 135,000 words. I don't know if that's 400,
It's amazing.
but I mean, the critics were good because the agents were good because it really is going to help me refine the story, and I'm glad I did it. I maybe out there for anybody who's going to write. I don't know what maybe listen to how the agents look initially. I'm not sure that's a great idea because like you're writing in your creative process, and it's like maybe that's the best step. Just get it out there and then refine it. So on the one hand, I was disappointed because I was like, oh dear God, I have so much more work to do. But on the other hand, I was like, I'm up for the challenge and I want to get the book out there. So it's going to be a very awesome intellectual challenge, and I'm totally up for it. It's just going to be work,
Question:
Awesome.
Making that jump from this is going to be a lot of work, this and feeling overwhelmed to no, actually, this is going to be a challenge, and I'm up for that challenge. What was that process like for you?
It's kind of like what we talked a little bit about last week was like, why am I writing the book, right? Like, so what's my why? What so you're up against, writing. I had a client say to me, and I never got it initially because the writing process for me is like pretty energizing and mysterious and kind of like it's purple. I mean, it's a very purple process for me. It's mysterious and off. And so this client of mine would say, he always had ideas to write, and he talked about how lonely writing would be. And I thought, no, it's not. And because to me, it was like so interesting. And as I finished up the book, and then you get that going, and then you start to interface with the agents, and you see the amount of work that needs to be done, and it's like all in your head. And it is incredibly lonely. It's a lonely process. So like, you're like, okay, I have a reality in my head that nobody else has in my head, right? Like I'm trying to process it. So it felt lonely, Gabe. Yeah, I was like, okay, this is going to be a lonely thing. It's like and then I was like, back to my why. Like, what these agents are really telling me is how to refine it. And if you want to get it out there, you need to listen to, it's back to like having radical humility and being like, okay, I want to get the book out there. It's a passion of mine. So it's like, all right, it's, I will listen to whatever they say, and I will, trust my intuition, and then retool it. So yeah, it was a pretty quick process. It took about a day of like thinking like, oh my God, it's going to be so much work. But then I was like, all right, well, I'm in. And I have a lot of incentives. I have a lot of things I want, Gabe. I have a lot of things I really want in life. And I really want to be able to leverage my knowledge. I want to be able to leverage a book. I have a lot of things very ambitious, and I really want, and you're welcome to go with us, Gabe. We got a trip. Cody and I have got a trip to Scotland. We got a trip to Iceland, right?
Scotland, Iceland.
Well, no, we need to be rich first, but like,
Need to be rich
so
first.
so one of the big things is just like why
need to make the time.
I want I want a lot of things, and to do that I have to leverage, and the idea is meeting needs. I mean, when you're writing something like this, what you're trying to do is meet needs. So it's like it all worked together. So I was like, okay, I'm in. So it was a pretty quick process, and now it's going to be just retooling. So I'm in.
Oh yeah.
Matt, you had some really interesting ideas talking about
So
for this particular week.
yeah, and I
So,
left
like,
you guys like 10 messages. Like,
just like
was
as the viewers,
amazing.
just so the viewers understand, we have this three-way thread going on, and we just send a bunch of audio messages. And
pretty
this
much,
week,
yeah.
Matt sent us about an hour's long worth of audio
Yeah.
clips for us to listen to, and I'm really jacked up and excited about it.
well, I was
because
like, that's kind of my. I can't really contribute with the tech, so I'm like, I can contribute on that level. So yeah, I was doing a cardio, and I was like in like 8,000 steps, and you know how flow states happen, and all of a sudden everything was coming
oh, dude,
to
so
me.
good.
And so the idea was
It's like
kind of
your
like,
audio clips was my podcast for the day.
well,
It was perfect.
it was pretty jacked up.
It was great.
But the idea was like, we talked last week about like men's mental health and like kind of the darker side of like, I think of it like a coin. So we looked at one side of the coin last week, which was maybe all right, let's take this issue very seriously. But then I was thinking as I was doing my cardio, I was like, what's the other side of that coin, which is how to emerge from that situation, and then how do you transition from maybe getting help or awareness, and then I said to you guys like, how do we become monsters? Meaning in the like the athletic sense, and
Yep.
how do we become men who are crushing it, who are having dominion over our spheres of influence. And by dominion, I don't mean that this patriarchal thing or necessarily. I'm just saying like the end game of getting better is not. I mean, we all want to get better, but it's like we want to then emerge from that situation and really start making some progress in different areas of our life. So that's the other side of the coin. So that was my idea. Like today, like we could talk about that process. Like, all right, we get help. We've identified these issues that are a little on the darker side, and then here's something on the lighter side. Like, how do we now emerge from that situation and become monsters?
Monsters isn't like such a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, it
I
could be
love that.
misinterpreted.
No, I think it's brilliant.
But it's like, yeah. So that was my kind of idea, and I thought a lot about the last podcast, and I talked a lot about the cathedrals and the Gothic buildings, and like, I want to just pick up on that. Like, I didn't emphasize that much is about like going into the building and seeing the light. So there's just like there's this twofold thing. Like the cathedrals are dark and Gothic, and the demons are there, and the angels, and these gargoyles are there. But the positive side is when you go into these churches, it's beaming with light. It's the purples and the reds and the to give us a sense of sanctuary, to give us a sense of hope and grace and peace and encouragement to move forward. So I think that for me, that idea of the cathedral again, it's like we get the dark side. We talked about the dark side last time, the outside of that church, and now like I kind of thought, let's go in the inside and let's explore the light a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to bring this back like deeper into how, because I think there's some really solid value in the last podcast being, okay, if you're suicidal, if you're at that point, here steps you can take to get better. Here's some help, ways you can approach this. Here's some questions you can ask. Here's some mentality you can have. And now it's like, okay, if you're not, how do you press forward? How do you become the alpha, the fucking best, right? Like, how do you move forward and own yourself and your dominion? That's the question. And to answer that, I actually have a very personal journey that I went on over this last like year and a half in order to do that specifically. Andy, I don't remember his last name. He started the program 75 Hard, which I'm about to go on a rant on. But Andy V, Josh, not Josh, Jordan Peterson is he saved my life at one point.
Wow.
Absolutely changed my entire perspective. Yeah, but I want to talk about this journey on, okay, what are the steps you can do to move better, to go better? Are you guys down for that?
Let's do it.
Andy Frisilla?
I'm
I
looking.
don't know why I said Andy V. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, F, not V. That's the one.
Yeah, let's hear about it, Gabe. Let's tell us about your experience.
Last year, as a lot of people who listening probably don't know, a couple years ago, I was in a really toxic relationship. She was great. We were terrible together, brought out the absolute worst in each other. When we broke up, I like spiraled health-wise. I was literally sitting on the couch on like a lazy boy recliner, eating cookie dough out of a tub. I'm talking those massive, literally sitting on my lap.
Way to go.
Yeah, from a spoon. I did it for a month.
Oof.
I ate cookie dough and pizza and laid on a couch for a month. I'm not one to spiral. Like, Cody, you've known me decades. I'm not one to spiral. I
that's not
spiraled hardcore.
That's real hard.
And I think
Cookie
that's
dough
a
is
pretty
like-
common,
that's
like
the
that's a pretty
lowest.
common thing, right? Like
Yeah.
just like it's a form of like self-soothing,
Yeah.
right? You just try to take the edge off the emotions and just like
something.
yeah,
Food is such a common avenue
yeah,
for that.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah. And so I went deep into the food and ended up weighing over 200 pounds. I've never weighed over 200 pounds in my life. I did at that moment. And something clicked for me, like, okay, this is absolutely unacceptable. And so, but from that, I didn't have the tools and I didn't have the motivation to make the change. I knew this was unacceptable. I didn't have like, how do you actually move forward from this other than like obsessing working out? I didn't, there was some disconnect that I didn't have. Fast forward to July, and I find out about Andy Frischella and his program 75 Hard. Something in it, I don't know, something in it just sparked something in me. And I think it's because his program is designed not to help you lose weight. It's designed to help develop mental toughness.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so his program, for those who aren't familiar, for you guys, his program is 2 45-minute workouts every single day. One of them has to be outside no matter what's the weather. No alcohol. Pick any diet, doesn't matter what it is. Pick a diet and stick with it. Zero cheat meals at all. And physically read 10 pages a day. You do that for 75 days. No cheating. His whole thing is if you question whether or not that's cheating, then it's cheating. That's his rule. So it's all about, can you stick with your own standards? That's the entire program. And there's like a time on and time off phase. I end up doing, it ends up being about 6 months out of the year. And I did that from July to July, 6 months. It was like a month on, basically a month on, a month off, what it ends up being. 6 months out of the last 12, I lost over 20 pounds, completely rechanged my body, put on a lot of muscle. But more than that, and it gets into like cold showers and meditations, and there's like interacting. Like one of them is you spend 30 days and you have to talk to another human, be kind to another human every single day. That's one of his things. I incorporated, and there's like so many cool things about it. All, again, not about developing your physical side, but developing the mental toughness. And to me, I think this is the piece that a lot of guys are missing. And a lot of guys spend all their time in the gym trying to work that out, and that's incredible. There's so many benefits. But once you've worked through, or at least addressed, your emotional issue, it's time to develop the mental. You can develop the physical, but it's also time to develop that mental toughness.
So you're actually separating the emotional from the mental? Is that what you're saying?
So I am only in how you work on them, not in the results necessarily. I don't think I would separate them in the results they provide. I separate them on how you develop, like how you work through your emotions and how you develop mental toughness. I would separate that.
Well, and it's interesting too. I'm looking at the book. 75 Hard will show you how to 100x the following traits in your life. So you got mental toughness, mental fortitude, confidence, self-esteem, self-worth, self-belief, and then grit.
Would not agree more.
Yeah. So you're dealing with, he's not saying, in this kind of marketing blurb, they're not like, get a six pack, get the ladies, they're just being like, so, which I think is a great, like, honestly, a great distinction about how things are marketed. I mean, they're saying like, the internals, your mental toughness, your mental fortitude, confidence, which is exactly where in my little rant when I was doing my cardio, was thinking like it's not just like, it's about like transformation of the spirit, right? It's transformation of, like Gabe, you mentioned source, like connecting to source. And it's about a transformation of the inner being, where you go from like darkness to light, and like we need help. We have core traumas. We have our shadow self. We have this darkness, and we're skipping like, okay, you get well. This is our second podcast. Well, that's a big step, but in the end, like this is exactly, Gabe, what I was thinking about. Like the internal game is changed when the spirit shifts over into a different world.
Reminds me of like a David Goggins.
Yeah,
kind of feel.
It's very
almost,
similar. Yeah.
So
I
Gabe,
love and hate the guy, but it's very similar.
Yeah. So
David
Gabe,
Goggins or the other guy?
David
You don't
Goggins.
like David Goggins?
I
Dude,
love and
most
hate him.
Marines don't seem to like David Goggins, and I think, and you know what the funny thing is I feel like, I think Marines are gonna hate me for saying this, but I feel like it's because they're like, guys, he's fucking better than me. Like,
yeah, he's
You can't argue with his results.
No.
but like whatever. I don't know anything about that stuff, so I'm sorry.
Gabe,
Anybody?
Gabe, what was your like? Could you distill your biggest takeaway from that from the book?
I can accomplish any fucking thing I set my mind to.
Nice.
That
I love that.
100% without question. If
And
I
so-
say
so-
I will
so-
do it, I will. There's
Okay,
an
and so
absolute
how long did that
confidence in there.
take? So you came from this like place of like, you like kind of making out with Ben and Jerry's and Pizza Hut. It's like you're on the
Straight up.
couch,
Oh.
right? And you're just like
Fresh
like-
out of a relationship. Oh yeah.
fuck
was swall-
this.
he was-
I'm eating
he was
ice cream.
swallowing. Yeah.
Fuck you all. You know? So at some point,
Oh,
at
dude.
some point, Gabe, like, right, you pick this book up, right? So,
Yep.
so you know, I'm picturing the story. Like, I've got you in a Rocky movie right now. Like,
Love it.
Yeah.
It starts out with you on the couch and you're covered with pizza and cookie dough.
Cookie
Yeah,
dough.
nasty. Oh,
Right,
so
so-
nasty. Yeah.
So,
Not even
so
cooked.
you get the book, right? And I imagine you're like, okay, I'm going to give this a try. How long did it take before you were like you had a sense internally that the game was changing?
Mhm.
Was that
Yeah.
like, how long did that take?
So
That initial sense.
I had, when I was reading, they have like a sales page for it. I heard about it from some other entrepreneur friends, and they were doing it, and they had been like 5 days in, and I was like, oh, this, I'm always intrigued. I'll read on it. Read the sales page, and it was not about losing weight, just like you pointed out. It wasn't about
Yeah.
it was all about develop your mental toughness, your mental fortitude, that confidence. And in that moment, I remembered growing up, I used to be this wildly disciplined kid. I used to be so I was like, you know what? Like I literally probably shouldn't tell that story. That's fine.
No, do tell.
I think you should just tell it. I think you should just tell that story right now.
I'm in.
There's-
That-
there is a lot that I have done in my life where it's in my mind, especially as a kid, and
Intriguing.
then I've gotten more into it. It's mind over matter. I have personally tortured myself in order to force myself to just deal with it, mind over matter. And so for me as a kid, that was like just my world. I was like, yeah, this is normal. I lost a lot, and like I was an extreme. Come nowadays, like the last 5 years or so, 10 years, I've lost a lot of that, and I lost the extreme edge, which is great. But I went to the opposite spectrum, where I was like this super soft, chubby boy, just like man child. It was really
chubby boy.
sad. No, it was really
you weren't that
sad.
chubby, Gabe. You weren't chat. You weren't
You
chubby.
say that.
No, I would
appreciate
never
that, but-
entitle you.
You know,
chubby.
but he was on the couch eating Ben and Jerry's.
That's true. With cookie dough.
That's a dirty.
Just
That's a dirty
right.
bulk.
Oh,
right
That's
there.
so
That's a
dirty.
dirty bulk, bro.
Dude, oh
It's
man.
such an image. It's unfortunate.
Jeez, I should give it your phone number if any of you guys are.
But you know, like you think about like what was happening, like
Mm-hmm.
you're probably down, like you know, testosterone drops off a little bit, like everything's just
Becomes
wonky.
spiral.
Yeah, and blood
Yeah.
sugar just through the roof. It's like, no.
Actually, as a matter of fact, I have a clip right now that I'd like to share with everybody. So here it is. This is what Gabe looked like. Take a look.
You bastard! You're gonna make me do this in post. I hate you for this.
What are you doing?
by myself.
You bastard! Oh, that's gonna happen. Cheers. Well played.
so good.
Very well played.
Oh,
that was
bro.
good.
Bro,
So-
I'm
So as
sorry,
you just
man.
saw that, to kind of answer your question, Matt, and I apologize to the viewers who had to just see that. To answer your question, Matt, the first week or two was incredibly easy, right? You're on the high of starting something new. It wasn't.
Did you have
until
support from a bunch of people, or were you just
No.
like
100%
so you were like,
lone wolf it.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do this.
Sigma male.
I was like, let's go for it. And so first couple weeks, easy. By week 3, so the first programs you do 75 days straight. The diet that I picked was 0 artificial sugar. So I'm talking no peanut butter, no bread, no nothing that's sugar free because it has
That's
the sugar
75 hard,
artemet.
bro.
That's fucking hard.
That's
to go
fucking-
from literally eating, like I was having ice cream 3 or 4 nights a week before
When
that.
I heard
to-
no peanut butter, my heart hurt just a little bit.
that's the so I always bring it up
I
because
have a,
that
I
one
have a little
hurts
bit of
so
an issue.
much.
I have a
Yeah.
little issue with
75
peanut
cardiac arrest.
butter. Yeah, right. I'm
When
a
I
fan.
gave
I'm a
up
fan of
peanut butter,
butter.
that was a hard choice, man. But I did 75 days, 2 workouts a day, no artificial sugar. First couple weeks, I was like, okay, I can do this. Week 3, I was like, damn, I just want some fucking pizza. And it
I
wasn't
want to
even
go
good pizza.
back.
It was
I know.
I
literally
want to go
the
back to the
Walmart-
couch.
Yeah, yeah.
Where's my couch?
Yeah, yeah.
Literally, it was about, but that was the point at week 3 where they said, okay, this is, and literally in the book, they say, this is where people make or break it. If you make it through week 3, You have what it takes, and you have no excuses to go further. If you don't make it through week 3, you were never meant to finish, and that stuck. Yeah, no,
Back to
they
the
don't.
couch, motherfucker.
They don't pull
Seriously.
punches.
Back to the couch.
Jeez. No
Yeah,
kidding.
they don't pull punches. It was like, honestly, if you can't go 3 weeks, what's wrong in your life? Like, give the list of everything that's wrong. If you can't go 3 weeks with one thing that you said you would do, and that hurt, and that hit, and I said, okay, fine. Made it through 3 weeks, and then it just became a matter of saying, I refuse to give myself an excuse. I refuse to give myself an excuse. I said, I will do this. It sucks. There's days where I'd get up at 5, wouldn't get back home till midnight, and still have to do my 45-minute workout at midnight. And I'm like, this fucking sucks.
Dude, I fucking love this. I fucking love this.
Yeah.
This is
But-
awesome.
It was
Dude,
it
it's so
was
awesome.
one of the most intense, most difficult things I've ever done. Actually, the most intense was, so how they have it is you do 75 days, then you take 30 days off. Then you do 30 days, and you can pretty much do 30 days on, 30 days off. And their goal is to get you to develop the habits so you can continue to do these habits even when you're not forced to do it because you're on the program, right? So then the last 30, so I started July 22nd. So June 22nd, you're supposed to time it so you don't do your final. It's phase 3. You
Wait,
don't do
can you
your-
pause? Can you pause?
Totally.
Remember when you and I had a nice, like, some coffee at Starbucks and a talk? Remember
Yes.
that?
Yes,
Were
I
you
do.
were you in the couch phase then?
It was just before the couch
Okay.
phase.
Oh,
Actually.
you were before the couch phase.
I was
okay.
just before the couch
All right.
phase.
All right, so
Yeah.
continue your story. Sorry, I was just
Cool.
kind of like trying to get some perspective.
Yeah, totally. That,
I was. No,
Cody.
because we
Matt's,
talked.
Matt's
No.
formulating something.
No, I, well, I
I
no,
know
I am.
he is.
conversation.
no,
I
but
know
because
how he
Gabe
works.
and I had this pretty
Yeah.
sick conversation.
Yeah, it was
But
like
I
a
don't-
couple-hour conversation. That was
And
incredible.
and I think you were talking about like the breakup.
Actually, as a matter of fact,
We were talking about
I actually have a clip about you guys at Starbucks. So
So-
everybody, here, take a look.
I don't
So,
even know how I'm gonna find one like that. Okay, this
So-
is gonna be some creative editing here.
So,
okay,
yeah, so
this is
Gabe,
great.
One of the all right, I keep going. I don't want to interrupt because I
You're
have a
good.
question that's burning in my heart right now.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, this one to this last part is super important. So, how they play it out is I started July 22nd. That was the day I started. You go through 75 hard, then you have phase 1, phase 2, and then phase 3. Phase 3, you start. It's 30 days. You start it 30 days before you started the 75 hard, the boot camp. So I started 75 hard on July 22nd. Phase 3, I would start on June 22nd or whatever, because I don't know how many days are in the month. So whatever, 30 days before, we'll say June 22nd. And the reason they do it is they say if you miss one day, you start all over. You start the year.
Back to the couch.
No, literally, you start the year over. If you
Holy
make it
shit.
1 year,
Yeah.
no, yeah,
Really? No way.
dead serious.
It's
And
just
this is
called
why I love the
punishment.
program.
It's ultimate punishment.
It
Wow,
is
that's amazing.
Anyways, the phase 3 you start 30 days before the last journey or when you started, and because if you miss one day, you go 29 days.
Right to
Day
the
30,
beginning.
you don't. Oh, and you have to take a progress picture every day. Day 30, if you don't take that progress picture on day 30, 1 year, phase 3, day 30, then you lost the entire year and you start all over again. You're not a what they call a live hard graduate. You laugh.
No,
Wow,
I
dude,
love
you better
it.
be on
I-
top of your shit.
I love it.
Have to be. Oh.
Wow.
I love
Yeah,
it.
I started phase 2. I went 3 days in and then got sick, was like throwing up and stuff. So I went for another day throwing up and then was like, okay, no, I'm done. Cut it, cut my losses. And then that was the only time I had to start over, thankfully.
Wow. Wow.
But I made it a full year, and that last month was the absolute hardest. The first month was the first 75 days was incredibly difficult. The last 30 was the biggest struggle because I knew everything was on the line. There was no room. If I messed up, entire year's work was done.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, makes sense.
I get 2 questions burning
me.
in my heart. So, Gabe, presumably people are kind of, they heard your story last week, right? And you went through some really hard stuff, and you kind of like almost like self cared or self treated yourself on some level. You did a lot of that work, and then and after that, you have this like heart wrenching breakup, which obviously send you to the couch. Use that as a metaphor, right?
It was
I
awful.
like
dude.
it.
Now-
I actually, yeah.
And then here you are, and then here you are now. You've emerged. You've done this program. Any words of encouragement, maybe for people who are kind of in the couch phase, or maybe even before the couch phase, in that kind of really dark place. Because you've made a 180, right? So like, how, what are some words of encouragement for people who are like in that couch phase?
Don't start big. I don't start big. That's what I would say. It took me to go from the couch phase to when I started 75 Hard. I was in the couch phase in September. I didn't start 75 Hard till July.
Yeah,
It took me like whatever that is, 8 months before I could.
That should be our first t-shirt. That's going to be our first t-shirt. Couch phase. Get out of the couch phase.
Honestly,
Anyway,
that's a really good
genius. Absolutely.
Anyway, go
genius.
ahead, Gabe,
Yeah,
sorry.
If
yeah.
you guys like that, comment couch phase below.
Couch phase.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. Hashtag
I-
couch phase.
Don't push yourself hard. A lot of people, when you start that spiral, and I say this specifically to men, and I say this specifically to men who you'll also be judging yourself. I think this is a natural
Wow.
characteristic for us. We tend to judge ourselves for the grieving and for the hurt and the pain that we feel, and for how
some
we're
shame,
responding
like
to
shame
it.
and, like,
There's tons
yeah.
of shame.
Yeah.
Contrary to what you may have thought, I wouldn't say get the fuck out of it. I would say don't start too strong. Like, don't try to conquer the world when you're in couch phase. Don't try to become Elon Musk tomorrow in your couch phase. If the best you can do is 10%, don't give 5. Give
Wow.
10.
Yeah.
That alone,
Yeah.
identifying, okay, here's the best I can do that. And then the other thing would be do little things each day. Like,
Little
if there's
things.
a little thing you can do.
So kind of like incremental improvement. Start
Yeah.
slow.
Exactly.
If I can just interject, I do have another
Please.
question. Is the one of my influences, and we'll probably get to that later, is Jung and Peterson, and Jung talked about, in his concept of literary criticism, like every hero has to have a descent. There's no hero story without a descent first. You don't have any comic book hero. You don't have any hero. They always have this descent. They always come from a place of trauma. Like every hero, we talked about Daredevil and our archetypes, right? This guy, we talked about Daredevil, and it's like the kid's blinded by some toxic chemical and gives him this always a descent. The hero always has a descent. So I think I would just like want to piggyback on what you're saying, like from maybe for a literary standpoint, but also from a very practical standpoint, is the descent is a precondition for the ascent. And you see that in Christianity too. Christ has the descent. And it's more than a literary structure. It is it's a reality. It's a literary structure because it's a reality. The descent sometimes is a necessary part of the ascent, and to go to the next level. And that would be something I would say is like, if you're in that, and I've been in my own versions of that descent or couch phase, however you want to phrase it, but it's a phase that sometimes is necessary for deep and radical transformation. Because that darkness, that self-hatred, that shame, it's dangerous, right? It's very dangerous, but it's also is the matrix and can be the foundation for like incredible transformation. If like what you're saying, Gabe, if you can like have incremental progress and you don't like view yourself in like black and white thinking, and you got to take it slow. So I just wanted to kind of throw that on there I'd like to hear 3 of the biggest consequences in your life, kind of post or mid 75 hard, going from the couch phase to like this, descent phase to like ascent phase. Like what are 3 takeaways that maybe encourage people? Like, how did your life change? What were some things that were really deep and like lasting? 3 of them.
Okay. Yeah, 100%. One of them is the confidence. Oh, well, actually, okay. I'm gonna say the confidence, both physical and mental. So, I have always struggled with my body image. I always thought I was super fat, and like I've always been I always thought I was very chubby. I always would like hide, and I was very insecure about that. This was the first time in my life, as a consequence, confidence-wise, first time in my life that because no artificial sugar for 75 fucking days, plus 2 workouts a day, and then 6 months of this on and off, right?
Wow.
Your body changes radically. So
yeah, you
much
showed
of
me the
my-
pictures. The pictures are incredible.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And so much of my mental energy that used to be wasted on insecurity, that used to be wasted on, this is how I look. I feel weird right now. Oh, I hope someone's not looking for me. Oh my God, look at that man's bicep. Shit, look at mine.
Yeah.
Damn it. I bet these people are looking at them and not me. Like, so all of these insecurities, right? That I spent so much of my mental focus on, gone. It's not that they were gone, but my mental focus was no longer there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because
so,
you looked in the mirror and you're like, damn.
yeah, I was
You
like,
know, I
oh
look
man,
pretty damn
first
good.
time in my life, I look good. First time in my life, I actually like how I look.
So that had a profound effect on your mental health. So like, I mean, I think this is a great thing to kind of maybe slow down on. Like,
Yeah.
The power of a physical transformation on your mental health. Because I mean, sometimes people think about, and this is exactly where I thought about, doing my little cardio thing. It was like, what's the low hanging fruit? I mean, because a lot of people are like depressed and struggling, and like, okay, well, I'll go to a psychiatrist and get on my antidepressants and whatever, fine, go for it. But like on the other side of it is like, read 75 hard, change your body, and you're going to feel fucking amazing. And you're going to have, and these are low hanging fruit things people can really do to have a massive transformation. And so you're saying like the physical transformation just really had a mental health transformation.
Huge. Absolutely huge. I would say that's the first one. And there's so many people that, actually I went to, so I think I told you guys, every time when I go to the gym, I'm in the sauna and I'm talking with other dudes, and I'll either be like in my own world meditating or I'll have a conversation. One of the questions I love to ask is, why do you work out? Why do you push yourself? Why do you come here? And so often the answer I get is, one, either they've lost like 80 pounds. I had this one guy who lost 120 pounds over the last year. Blew my mind. And then, or they do it because this is their therapy. And the confidence that you can come when you end up losing any kind of weight is huge. And I think it's something a lot of guys don't really talk about. We talk about wanting to be stronger. We don't talk about the confidence or the byproduct of that. One of the byproducts of that, this is a really cool one. My girlfriend.
Dude, that's what I was hoping to get to.
Yeah.
I was hoping that would be
my
one of the
God.
3. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. So, she is this is I am going to risk it and say this.
Bring it.
This is the first time, and I'm sure other guys can relate to this. This is the first time I have been in a relationship with someone that I am like incredibly attracted to. She is wildly attractive to me, like so sexy. First time in my life,
Bro.
totally changes my perspective.
I gotta say, Imani's amazing. You have to meet her. I can't
love
believe
to
you
meet
haven't
her.
met Imani yet.
I have not. When did you meet her?
I think we're going to be
Wait,
coming
did
up
you go
in
to
Maine in, like,
Colorado?
Well, I went to
March.
Colorado with Danielle, and
Thanks for inviting me, asshole.
well,
Just
listen.
kidding. No, I'm kidding.
I mean,
It's you and your wife. Sorry.
I mean, it was
I
really
was
just
being a
it
little
was.
selfish.
It was.
I'm sure Danielle would love
There's
that.
a whole backstory
Why
to
the
that.
fuck
We're gonna
is this
leave
guy
it.
in the
Okay.
back seat?
So the reality is
Read
that
my books.
Imani's awesome. I hope that Imani hears us talking about her and realizes that we think she's awesome. And that's what
She's
it comes
awesome.
down to. Yeah.
Yeah, she's awesome. She did listen to the last episode. But when her and I first got together, first time we sat down in a coffee shop and we're talking, I asked her, who inspires you? And she said, I do. I inspire me.
Wait.
Yeah. Yeah. No, straight up.
Fucking
Oh
clap.
yeah, that's good. Yeah, yeah,
Cody's
Yeah.
watching me clap.
yeah.
So
One
Dude,
of these times I'm going to have her
that's awesome.
be a guest on here because I think she would add a lot of value too.
I love that.
She's
Yeah.
great.
I got some ideas too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
She's actually a phenomenal artist. I bought a piece from her,
Wow.
and I'm gonna put it in one of my Airbnbs called the. I'm sorry, this is super rabbit trail, but
No, I don't
like,
think
I'm
it
gonna-
is actually. No,
Well, like,
I've got.
I'm-
I see the
I'm
connection.
gonna put it in one of my Airbnbs. We're calling it the Alice Room, and it's gonna be Alice in Wonderland themed.
Yeah.
And Amani's piece is gonna sit in there because it's perfect.
So-
It's this beautiful picture
so
of
the-
this. Yeah. Anyways.
No, go ahead. No,
Actually, you know what? As a matter of fact, I'm gonna show a picture of it. This is what the picture is right here of Amani. This Amani, she drew this thing. It's amazing.
So
Or painted this thing. It's beautiful.
So this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
like back to my medieval like Gothic church. Like, and you go in and there's fucking light.
Yeah,
This is the
yeah.
light I'm talking about.
Yo,
this
the-
is,
yeah.
this is what I'm talking about. All the juicy goodness, all the cream filling, all the good stuff that's coming from that, because you, Gabe, did this transformation. You had efficacy over your life. You did the hard work, and you developed this confidence, and now, dude's got a very attractive young woman, and you guys have this vibe, and she's an artist, and Cody meets her, and the art's going to be in there. Like, how fucking cool is that?
Yeah.
So cool.
How fucking awesome is that? And if Gabe didn't, maybe if you hadn't have done this program, Gabe, maybe you wouldn't have had the confidence. Maybe you wouldn't have the physicality.
Your life would
the
be different.
attraction.
Oh, totally. Oh, totally. I
You'd
would
be
not be.
you'd be 275 pounds. You'd be sitting on the couch, still eating the cookie dough.
That's called
Straight
floor
up.
stage.
I wonder if you guys can relate to this. This was the first time in my life I've been with someone, and I'm fine. I guess I'm fine saying it because I'm about to say it. First time in my life I've been with someone, and the thought is, this person is not only incredibly intelligent, incredibly sexy, incredibly emotionally in tune and sensitive, very in the feminine, and also can translate and sway into the masculine as needed, has this really nice fluidity and wholeness, has done the work on herself. Wow, she could have anyone she wants, and yet she chose me.
She's with you.
Yeah.
So-
Both, it brings a ton of
I would've
confidence
chose
and
you.
insecurity at the same time. Do you guys
course.
relate to this?
I relate to it absolutely, but I think it's just an encouragement. Like, this is what's possible. I mean, you last time you went through some periods of abuse. You had a beyond suicidal ideation. You were like in a very dark place, right? And you kind of hit this relationship. You hit this descent phase, couch phase, 75 heart, and dude, like, and now you're in this beautiful relationship. You guys have this amazing vibe, and it all comes from like living in the light and your work that you did. I think that's just really encouraging, because I think a lot of men are struggling. They're lonely. They're really in a place of darkness, and it's like,
You don't know how fast your life can change.
Well, bro, and
Yeah.
right now it's so hard to be a man right now.
yeah,
Like there's so like I feel like there's been this hyphen, like women, the whole Me Too thing. After that thing came out, which I think is great, by the way. I think that whole initial concept is beautiful because people are speaking out. But we got men who have been sexually assaulted. Gabe, you're one of those people. And these guys don't want to talk about that shit. They don't want to talk about the things that have happened to them because it's just not a manly quote unquote thing to say.
it's just, I think it's important to note that Gabe felt this incredible sense of confidence, and then
Which is such a rarity
Well, and
that
I
you
think
did
the
that.
thing is, I'll go into this. I won't really go into this, but like my opinions, you take them for what they're worth, is like the role of the feminine on the masculine, and like to have that in your life as you walk this journey and embrace this masculine energy, you change, and now you have this. You've attracted this amazing person in your life. Like, how fucking awesome is that?
Yeah.
Honestly.
How fucking
really
awesome is it? Like,
Yeah, no,
what, it's just so fucking encouraging.
That's what I have with my wife. That's what Gabe's got with Imani.
Yeah. It makes such
That's what Matt is coming.
I'm
You
not
got
at
it right
liberty.
now.
I don't know if I'm liberty to say what my situation is.
I will
but-
say this, though.
Fair.
I will say this, as far as Matt goes, his two daughters are some of the most amazing people in this world.
Thanks, man. Appreciate
No, I'm
that.
serious.
thank
And that's a reflection of the beauty that Matt has brought to
Thanks,
them,
brother.
to their
Yeah,
lives.
thank you.
And so for me, that's just as equally valuable and true.
Yeah, thank you, man.
You know?
Means a lot. This idea of excellence, this idea of like kicking ass, and this idea of like having high levels of achievement. So maybe I can open up a world where if somebody is interested in a line for that, to open up and to
Yeah.
and to live in that, and to be able to align with who they are underneath that presence, that masculine presence. That's it's just a huge motivator. It's a biological motivator
Yeah.
for men to like fucking be a monster. Because women, I mean, we're going here. Women are a big part of that dynamic for us men.
Oh, dude, there's nothing more
And
beautiful and wonderful in this world.
Yeah.
To pursue, to perform for, to be
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I want to come home.
here we go.
And I just
Okay.
want to. I want to come home, and I want my wife to be like, "You're the
Monkey
fucking
shoulder
man, dude.
can
like,
fuck
you,
up a
You are
podcast
the
like nothing
guy
else."
who's like taking care of me. You've been making all the money. You've been doing everything. Like, you take care of the girls. I have 2 girls. You know, like you are making sure that the house is taken care of. I mean, there's so many things. Like, the provision concept is so necessary for men. We desire as men to be the kind of guys that go out and just take care of our women. Like we do. Like I do. I know you do. I know Gabe does. But like we
There's
just
something natural
want.
to be
It's
that
not that like
provider.
if
Yeah,
Danielle,
yeah,
my
it's
wife, if she wants to
biologic,
go out
yeah.
and like she works her ass off. She does. She does a really good job, you know, doing that. But in the end, I want to win so hard for my wife. You know, like that's what I want to do. Like for me, that's just I want to come home and I want her to be like, you know, like
Yeah.
I'm stoked about
Well, it's
you right
excellence. It's ascending dominance hierarchies. It is like becoming excellent. It's like it's part of the dynamic that like brings life to a man. But when you're in couch phase, you're like I'm, and this is what I'm going back to that because who are we speaking to? Like we're speaking. Hopefully, encourage one person. We encourage this podcast gets one person out of couch phase. We've won.
Yeah.
Right. And so
now. Dude, we totally want to.
and I just want to go back to that. If you're in couch phase, like
We're getting a
hashtag
t-shirt,
couch phase. That's our first T-shirt.
I love
It's
it.
like
I want everybody to
you know,
hashtag couch
Gabe
phase
went from
right
couch
now.
phase to this, and I've seen the pictures of Gabe and his young lady for Halloween, and she's beautiful, and Gabe looked amazing. Gabe's smiling, and muscles are flexing, and it's just like
Strong.
right. Well, no, if we put that in a movie, you go from couch phase to that. It's fucking Rocky.
Yeah, yeah.
It's what Jung would say. You have the descent, and then you have the ascent, and you know, let's promote this book. 75 Hard was something that really helped Gabe kind of like ascend a dominance hierarchy.
Well, it snapped you out of it ultimately, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know that
it's not what
experience, like-
snapped me out of it necessarily, but it's what changed me. Because from being in couch phase, that was in like September. I didn't
Hashtag
start
couch phase.
7. Yeah, I love how that's just become the phrase now.
It is.
I didn't
first
Totally
start.
making a shirt. It's gonna say Plan Z on the front and couch face on the back.
Perfect. I didn't start 75 Hard until July. So it was months later. I actually had a really deep transformation. That was about a month. So I said I did cookie dough and couch for a month. I was not joking. It was
Cookie dough and couch. Yeah.
yeah, it was rough. It was early September, and then early October I flew out, and I'll make this story really quick. I flew out, had out to Utah, met up with a whole bunch of entrepreneurs there at like a random meetup that I got invited to, and had a really mystical experience. It changed my life. And while having this
Was there
mystical
little chocolates involved in that, Gabe?
there was 90 milligrams of little chocolates involved
90
in that.
milligrams.
I didn't know what that meant when I ate 90 milligrams.
We're going
of
full
little
out Joe
chocolates.
Rogan now. We're going
I
full out
was.
Joe Rogan.
I almost
Joe
jumped
Rogan.
out. No, literally, I almost jumped out of the 3rd-story window, down to a concrete. Like this was a really
Dude,
weird
no way.
time.
Wow, this just got so dark.
This wasn't meant to be dark. That was just like I didn't. I took so much. My life has a whole bunch of random stories. I took a lot, and because I took a lot, I didn't realize it. World was glitching out. Anyways,
Hashtag I took a lot. That's the
I
next
took a
T-shirt.
lot.
That's the next T-shirt. Hashtag I took a lot after couch face.
no, literally. And this was like coming off of having like all of that sugar. I go out here, and I'm laying in bed, and I had, there were 3 realizations, and I'll share one of them here. And one of them was from laying on bed, world is spinning, and all of a sudden this connection with source opens up, and it says, you need to stop self-pitying or you will never get out. And it was this image of this literally this toilet and just the water
Damn.
spinning down this toilet. No, literally. And it was like, you will never get out of this if you don't stop now. And to tie this back
Hashtag
in,
you're a piece of shit.
no, literally, it was literally source saying you're a piece of shit. And it is what I needed to get out. So to tie this into like one of the how we ended the last podcast, where you need enough leverage. Sometimes that's your kids, sometimes that's someone else if it's not you. That same thing happened here. I needed enough leverage, and that leverage was source changing my perspective of the
Love it.
situation.
Fucking
Instead of
love
me
this, yeah.
looking at it and saying I am in couch phase, it was change the perspective to say, if you stay here, you will not get out.
Yeah.
Nothing will
fucked.
light a fire under your ass faster than that. And then even from that point, it still took like 7 months before I could even get to a place where
Well,
I
I
could
think
think of
that's-
starting 75 hard.
Well, I think that's really like, I think Jung would like appreciate that. The descent phase doesn't have to be a week-long couch phase. The descent phase can take some time. I mean, so if you're in couch phase now, so we have the broader concept of the descent, and in the descent we have couch phase. It can last some time.
Yeah.
But you can come out of couch phase, you can get great body, you can develop confidence, and back to what we talked about, this dynamic, you can attract a nice young lady, you can attract a beautiful woman, and you can have this engagement, you can have this dynamic. Basically, your life can fucking change
so fast.
so fast. Wow. I love it,
Yeah.
Gabe.
You really don't know how fast your life can change. Let me word it this way. To go from we talked about all these different phases, right? You have the couch phase, the descent, you have the ascent, you have the different things that'll happen afterwards and how incredible life can be, and you don't know what happened. The way you transition from one phase to another, in my experience, correct me if I'm wrong, in my experience, the way to transition from one phase to another is by either developing enough leverage to finally make that change, or reframing the meaning of what it means to either be in that phase or what the next phase is, so that the meaning becomes essentially produces that leverage.
Yeah.
Is that your experience as well?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's true. And the other thing that comes in my head is back to Jung, is the confrontation with the shadow, and how the shadow self, these parts that we kind of identified last week, these dark parts, that maybe these unidentified parts of our psychology, our subconscious, they're operative in our life, and they just kind of lock us down. And Jung and Peterson talked about the confrontation with the shadow in the descent, because that's essentially what it is. You're confronting the darkest fucking parts of who you are. They just literally want to say, no, it's ice cream and pizza. Fuck the world. Let the world burn.
Yeah.
As long as I have this, I'm good.
Yeah.
That's some dark stuff. So, yeah, that is kind of my experience, is like confronting who you are and confronting the darker stuff, bringing it to light. Like let that stuff come to the surface. Maybe you need counseling. Maybe you need whatever you need.
Well, there's a lot of shame in bringing that stuff to the light.
Totally, dude.
When you have a lot of crap in your life that is really embarrassing for you to expose to the public, going to counseling is not like, oh yeah, just go to counseling. Like just going and talking to a friend is not like, oh yeah, let's just go talk to a friend.
I'm locking in on you now.
Yeah,
Cody.
but ultimately what it comes down to is that you do need to make that step.
So
That is the most important step.
the
That is
last-
more important than 75 hard at the moment, because you cannot get to 75 hard until you do that.
Yes.
I think.
Okay. Can you define shame? Your existential definition of shame. Let's talk definition.
So you kind of live your whole life where it's just like, this is how you're supposed to live your life. Someone kind of sets that precedent for you initially. It could be your parents, friends, culture, whatever it is, but somebody sets that precedent for you. This is how you're supposed to live your life morally. This is how you're supposed to live it spiritually. This is how you're supposed to live your life, whatever, job, whatever. And you just keep on screwing up. Like, you're just like, oh, you're just like, I can't quite hit that mark of being that person that society is telling me that I'm supposed to be, or that my spirituality is supposed to telling me that I'm supposed to be, or that and so it's just, you really just, you don't understand the concept of grace, because grace is not really present. There's no presence with grace at all. Like, there's just the opposite, which I think is truly shame. I think ultimately, like, you just,
So you define shame as like missing the mark. not living up to
Yeah.
cultural
Yeah,
expectations.
like
your
you're
own
supposed to hit 10 and
expectations.
you hit 5.
Right.
You're
So
supposed to hit 10,
right.
you hit 9.
And
You're supposed
so-
to hit 10, you hit 1.
Okay. So
You know, like it's just, and then it's just like this constant failure, which I believe failure is part of the recipe for success. However, if you don't understand that it's part of the recipe for success, you're never going to experience success.
you've defined shame. Now tell us about how does it manifest in the psyche? So somebody feels shame. Fuck, this sucks.
Oh, you spiral. You go
So-
to couch mode.
Yeah.
And then from couch mode, you go to dark. Like like couch mode, from what I understand, is
You have your-
like
yeah.
that's a not a good place to be because it gets you over 200 pounds metaphorically and
Hashtag
literally.
coach mode. You're not a good place to be.
Hashtag coach mode.
But like if you if you continue your life in couch mode, eventually it will go beyond couch mode. It will go homeless mode. You know, it will, like, you won't own a couch. You'll be on the streets, literally, metaphorically, you'll be totally homeless. And I mean spiritually destroyed, like emotionally destroyed, physically destroyed. And it all in the end just leads to death. I mean, that's really what it feels like. So for me personally, it's like I've never gone to homeless mode, but I will say I feel like I've gone beyond couch mode.
But it sounds like to me, when you've encountered shame, you've defined shame, you're kind of missing the mark. And
You
then,
feel like a horrible person.
then you just
I
feel
mean,
like a piece of shit.
yeah,
That's
absolute
Gabe's
horrible
transcendental
person.
experience.
Yeah.
Right. And then, sorry, Gabe.
That's accurate.
So what it sounds like for you, like in that mode, there's a state where you're, I know you and I have talked a little bit about this, but like you're catastrophizing all the implications. Like, okay, I'm gonna look like shit. I'm gonna be poor. My kids are gonna be destitute. My wife's gonna marry.
Oh, you
another
think
man.
about, okay, so
you
like for me, it's just like,
over and over and over.
like, I mean, I don't want to, there's no way I could be relative to the next man or the next woman. But if you were to think about the one thing that you would absolutely never want to experience in your entire life, okay, like think about that one thing. It could be maybe you lose your family. It could be maybe you go to prison. It could be
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
you have like you become such an addict that you literally are homeless. Like it could be like, you think about all these, what you say is catastrophes, living in that space, you know, getting to a point where it's
Stuck.
like,
You're
okay, it's
fucking
one thing to be
stuck.
couch mode.
Yeah.
It's another thing to be like, now I'm living in a
Catastrophe.
hypothetical catastrophe.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the key word, is hypothetical catastrophe, because,
But it's also like if
you're living in it.
it could happen, right? If you
And
don't-
it could happen, but that's why you're living in it, is because it's not like something that's completely unrealistic. It's possible because you know that it's possible. You've seen people deal with that shit. You've also, you know, it's not impossible for you to be addicted to something. You can be, and you maybe are addicted
Right.
to something,
Right.
you know, and it could lead you to a point where you're like, oh, my relationship now is getting destroyed. Like for me, it's like I lived in this life, and I've talked with you about this a lot, but I lived in this life where I was afraid of losing my wife, afraid of losing my kids, being the outcast of my family. You know, there's situations that I've been so like afraid that it would even put me, you know, it put me into like being completely outcast by every human being in my entire life.
in your
Because,
mind,
yeah, in my mind, I'm making up all these scenarios, you know,
we
like,
talk a lot about.
yeah, it's just like, and it's this hypochondriac concept, or this hypochondriac mentality where it's just like you're
It's
just
fear, right?
you're
just stuck in
fearing everything, you know, and it's
fear
just like,
mode. Yeah.
but it all, if you dig deeper, it all comes back to the image that you want to have for society.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and that to me, ironically, is another problem, you know,
Yeah.
that needs to be taken care
So-
of, because that's not the answer. The answer is not to be the best person you can be in an image for society. The best thing is for you to just be
All right.
honest,
Yeah.
open, grace giving.
So we've got Gabe's story of like transformation, like 75 hard, fucking great story. So you mentioned another word, grace, right? Like, so
There's something I know.
so tell us a little bit about your story. Like you've got shame, right? You've defined it. You've showed us how it manifests in the psyche, where you're just like it's like a spider web of like, you see all the implications, right? And I could lose this, I could lose this, I could lose this, I could lose this. Being stuck in that. And then you use another word, which is grace. So can you define when you use the word grace, what do you mean by that word?
You know, there's this element that in the Christian faith, and I don't want to lose people, like, hear me out for a second. Like,
Dude, this is your
there's
story.
this element that I've looked through so many religions. I've looked through so many different, concepts of living the best moral life you can possibly live, living the best human life you can possibly live for the whole world. And it's just like, in the end, it's like, because I believe, and I would say I'm certain that everybody has skeletons in their closet to some degree. If you do not have some sense of forgiveness, some sense of knowing that it's okay, like, I forgive you.
Yeah, forgiveness.
Like, anybody, think about your skeletons.
would you define
I want
grace
people to think about the skeletons in their closets.
Define grace is a sense of forgiveness.
Yes, and I mean like forgotten. Like I don't mean in the sense of like, okay, we're gonna keep that in the back of our minds, okay, and but like no, it's no longer a part of you.
Yeah. Do you have
Okay,
like?
yeah.
Do you have like a verse, a scripture verse, or a song lyric that kind of like can distill that, like in an artistic sense or a literary sense?
I mean, there's a verse that comes to mind that's just like, for by grace we are saved through faith. It's not of ourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast.
Say that again, please.
It-
I like it.
It's
No.
for by grace we are saved through faith. Okay? It's not of ourselves. In other words, there's nothing we can physically do. There's nothing that we can mentally do to achieve that.
Right.
It's the gift of God, which I believe is Christ, not of works. That's just affirming the concept that there's nothing that you can fucking do to do good
Yeah.
to get there,
You're fucked.
lest any man should
You're
boast.
fucked.
Yeah, and to me, and lest any man should boast. So for me, yeah, to me that's the whole point, and it's just, and that's for my personal subjective Christianity standard, like our opinion.
Yeah. So how?
And it's
how does,
but it changed my life.
So how does grace? The sense
I'm
of
forgiven,
grace
totally forgiven.
heal your shame.
Yeah.
And then like Gabe's story, take you from descent to ascent, like bring you back to the light, back to my. I'm gonna obsess about my cathedral.
Yeah.
How does it take you from the Gothic, the dragons, the peering gargoyles, into the being washed into the light of the church? Your
Like-
worst possible moment,
Yeah.
the Creator Himself is like puts His arm around you and says, "No, we're good. It's all in the past. I love you. Let's keep moving."
Yeah. Ultimately, I mean, and
So the sense of acceptance,
right. And here's the problem: is that I think that humanity actually kind of blinds that truth. For me, blinds that truth in the sense where it's just like you come back to. I say that verse, but people always come back to that. Not of works. Like people are like, no, but of works. Like to me, it's almost like they change the wording where it's like, it's not of works. It's actually but
this
of
is
works.
interesting. Like so,
So you almost got to work your best, and it's not just that. It's also like the
what does that mean?
relationships
Like,
that you're
so-
in.
Yeah. So what does it mean? Like, because if you come from a Christian context, the of works, we kind of have an idea of what that means.
Yeah.
But if you don't have any idea of like what, like you say of works, like somebody's in couch mode, like what does of works mean to them? Or
Oh,
if
it
you're in
means that
shape-
they should be in the gym. They should be pumping iron. Like they should be, they should be making sure that they're not eating cookie dough. They should
Yeah.
be eating salads.
Yeah.
Like they should be, like to me, like couch mode, that's the most comfortable place to be ultimately. Everyone feels that. There's always a standard that everybody has to feel like they need to live up to. And honestly, so hear me out on this, okay? Please hear me out on this for a second, okay? There's a
I've got
point.
mezcal and time,
There's-
so
There's a
whatever.
point. I feel
all
like
ears.
there's a point where it's like you got to realize that you can always set the bar higher, The bar can always, like right now, all of us can technically have the bar set higher, which should be a positive thing. But the problem is that when you start setting the bar higher to a negative connotation, where you start saying, oh, this is like, I suck, because I'm not making million. I'm only making 100. To me, it's just like that should never be the process. You got to give yourself grace. Like there's this idea of like I'm talking about forgiveness and grace from a spiritual standpoint, not just from a common grace standpoint.
Yeah.
Like for us to give ourselves grace and be like Gabe, I mean, you made some huge changes in your life where you're like, you went from couch mode to 75 hard. Okay. Well, 75, just the fact that you're even exploring the idea of doing 75 hard is a massive, massive, huge step. I think, it's one thing to actually take the step. It's another thing to be like, no, I'm actually going to figure out what I need to do to be better, and give yourself some grace and not just be like, no, I'm going to just like,
How
there's
do
this
you find that balance? How do you find the balance between grace and excuses?
Well, you're either moving
And Matt, I wanna
forward,
hear your
which just
thoughts
means
on this
you're
too.
like, how do I do better? Like, and then it's just like that's moving forward. Just thinking that, just taking the time to think about how do I move forward. Okay, not just be like, oh, I should have, oh, I should have, oh, I should have. No, but being like, okay, planning, premeditation on how to do better. Okay, like that's step one.
In your
It could
mind,
be
anything, even at contemplation, action doesn't matter. Any thought forward, iteration is,
Like if you're in the mindset where you're
Progress.
just like, no, I'm actually not going to be able to do it. Like defeated. Yeah, everyone's experienced that level of defeated. We're defeated. That's number one step is to get out of that mode is to be, I'm not defeated. I'm not defeated. Okay, yeah, I'm doing drugs. I'm shooting heroin, okay? I'm looking at porn. You know, I have an addiction to this. I have an addiction to that. I have an addiction to this. You know, like whatever. Okay, fine, but I'm not defeated. If you're defeated, if you believe that you're defeated, you cannot move forward. You're sitting on the couch, you're 200 and however many pounds, you're eating cookie dough, you're watching your favorite Netflix, you don't have a girlfriend, you don't have a boyfriend, you don't whatever, but like all you're doing is just drowning in defeat. All you have to say is I'm not defeated.
is it
Like start with that.
I think it just clicked. Correct me if this is what you're saying, because if this is incredibly important. The moving people, we hold ourselves and society tends to hold men to this high standard of always progressing, and it's natural for us to always want to climb that hierarchy, right? Jordan Peterson talks about the dominance hierarchy. We're always wanting, or not the whatever the hierarchies. We're always trying to climb this, right? We're always trying to prove not only to ourselves but to others that we're better.
You have to realize how valuable 1% is.
Mhm.
How valuable 1% is. Everybody's thinking as they're sitting on the couch eating their cookie dough, in couch mode, whatever you want to call it, everybody's thinking about how they need to do a 1x or a 2x or a 3x. Okay, guys, a 1x, 2x, and a 3x is a 100%, 200%, 300%.
One of the common elements I'm hearing is incremental change.
It has to be.
Like it has to be incremental change. So you can't be defeated, but on the other hand, you have to accept incremental change, and you can't really embrace black and white thinking of yourself. You have to like if you're in coach mode and you like get a 1% gain one day, fucking awesome.
Right.
And if you get a 1.2 the next day,
It's huge.
fucking awesome.
And a lot of people, but there's a lot of gurus out there that would paint the 1% as
Right, I
like
agree.
they don't give grace to people for 1%. And I'm sorry, guys. There's a lot like that's messed up.
It is messed up.
That's really messed up. Listen, I've had a lot of success in my marriage with the 1% concept. I've had a lot of success in my business with the 1% concept. Like I've had a lot of success in just life in general with 1% concept or 2%, whatever. The point is like, I think it's great. You know, you got Grant Cardone where it's just like 10x your business, you know, let's do 1,000%, you know, or whatever. Like, but when it comes down to it, it's like, no, like you need a lifestyle change,
Yeah.
not just a diet. That's why I asked you earlier about diet stuff, because to me, no offense, guys, but I don't really believe in diets. I believe in diets to shock you into something maybe. But to me, ultimately, diets are not really the key element to success. The key element to success is a lifestyle change. And the only way you're going to have a lifestyle change is by small incremental percent changes
Yeah,
each
that's
day.
the common theme between like
You have to.
Yeah.
Like people are like, say Bible study, you know, or reading books, personal development. Okay. Oh, read one book a day. I've heard people say that. Oh, you got to read one book a day. One book a day is going to change. How about just a sentence? How about just maybe a chapter or a paragraph, you know, every day? The
Yeah.
goal is to just do one little thing, and that's get off the couch.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do. Like for me, that is what changes this one philosophy, which is thinking poorly of yourself.
shame.
Thinking about shame, shameful things, thinking about your skeletons, taking the big things that you've done that have screwed up your life, compiling them all into one big thing, and then just saying, I can't change. It's like, no, these 1%ers, guess what? These 1%ers and 2%ers are what got you to those skeletons.
Yeah.
So you can reverse the skeletons by doing the 1 or 2%ers.
Yeah.
The I'm trying to remember his name, and it's really Ed Milet. I don't know why I couldn't remember.
I love Ed Milet.
Ed Milet's great. Have you read his book One More?
I haven't actually.
I haven't.
You should.
no.
You guys should.
He
Oh,
bought
you
an
both would
island
love
here
it.
in Maine. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did. I was watching his Instagram stories the whole time he was going through it. Just because it was like, oh my god, that's Maine. That was my home. he had his whole process is to take this 1%, is to really systematize 1%, and to streamline. So systematize 1% and streamline the confidence, back to how tying this all into what we were talking about earlier, and how like what the outcome of going through the ascent after the descent, you go through descent, the outcome of after going to that is having this incredible confidence. His goal was to streamline and systematize that, and his book One More does it exceptionally well. And what he talks about is find something, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Whenever you commit to doing something, do it, and then one more. Do that what you committed to, and then one more.
So we've got book recommend. We got 75 Hard.
Yep.
We've got the Bible, right?
Yeah,
And then
I
we've
know, I
got
pretty
what's
much
this book
read the
recommendation,
Bible.
Gabe?
And then one more by Ed Milet.
One
Yeah.
more. Okay, we got a third book
Yep.
recommendation.
For those who are looking to take that step and who are like, okay, I need
Incremental
something,
change, yeah.
those are going to be incredible resources. One of the other things, just really practical.
Specifically, I have to say this really quick. Specifically, Ephesians.
Okay.
That book,
Oh,
that particular verse that I actually recommended was Ephesians 2:8-9,
Okay.
and that book is my favorite book of all time. Anyways, I'm sorry.
book.
Carry on, Gabe.
No, good book.
Noted.
It's phenomenal.
One thing that was really practical to tie this in, both with my story and with Cody's, one thing that I did, it's an exercise. It's kind of dangerous, but I learned it from Jordan Peterson. And I say dangerous in a mental sense. If you're not careful, it can be taken too far. You can get lost in it. But it was to write out in story form what your personal hell looks like. I have it written out in my shower. It's laminated in my shower.
Wow.
And I read that at least once a week. I'll go through and I'll read. If I let myself continue down, and that's one of the things I had to do when I was exiting couch mode. If I let myself continue down this path, where will I be in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Where will I be? And talk about the skeletons in your closet, Cody. Like everyone has their own personal slice of hell. And if you let yourself go, if you let yourself go there, what will that look like? And instead of just living as if that's where you're headed, if you write it out and put it on paper and say, if I'm not careful, that's where I couldn't go. That's motivating as hell to move forward.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's powerful stuff,
That
man.
is very powerful.
I got to take a pee break.
Taking a pee
You do
break.
that. You do that.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, he's gone. Monkey shoulder.
Oh, nice catch. I think. Oh man. So I know you have your own personal stories into Descent, and your own version of
I do.
this.
Yeah.
What are your recommendations? I'm going to ask you the same question you asked me at the beginning, because I didn't actually. You gave me a heads up that this is kind of where we're talking about. I didn't prepare this story ahead of time.
Yeah, right,
And
right.
I literally just went for it, and I was like, "Yeah, no, this actually ties in really well." What are the three kind of outcomes on the other side? What does that look like? What is the way that you could encourage people, and then what are the three outcomes from the other side for you?
That's a good question. So I would
stole it
think
from
like
someone. It's great.
Well, I would think the fundamental thing, like for me, I've gone through some crazy shit in the last 5 years, 10 years. One of the things, Gabe, that really helped me, it was subversive and defiant. I think it sounds so kind of douchey to say that, but one of the things that I did early on, and Josh Cousineau and I really thought through this, was one of the things I kept telling myself in some of the hard things I've gone through was that I was my own worst enemy. And by telling myself I was my own worst enemy, I didn't realize it at the time. I was giving myself a path for radical healing, because it was subversive in the sense of like people often go through hard things and they blame everybody else, right? They're blaming this person, they're blaming this person, but I was like, nah, fuck that. Like I want the fastest path of healing I can find. And I thought the fastest path to healing was not to blame other people, was to blame myself. And I said, I I accept, and I literally, Gabe, I woke up, it was like part of my mantra. It was the second thing I'd tell myself. I do 10 breaths and I would say, there is a God and he's a gracious God. And then the second thing I would say the second thing would be like, I am my own worst enemy. And that gave me so much space to be like, okay, so how do I get better? Like, how do I improve? And wasn't the lawyers, or it wasn't the ex, or it wasn't the, this condition or that condition, or this person or that person. I was my own worst fucking enemy. And I can't tell you how much that helped me heal. It's the fastest path for healing to me, because when you're blaming everybody else, there's a sprinkling of delusion in that, right? There's a little bit of like, oh, well, and there's also secondary gain. Like, if I can blame somebody else, then I'm off the hook. But the problem with that is, if you're off the hook, what if you're supposed to be on the hook, right? And so you've denied yourself a expedited healing. So I was like, you guys know I'm a big Elon Musk fanboy, but like, I wanted to accelerate my healing as fast as I possibly could. And so by saying to myself, I am my own worst enemy, I was able to get the help that I needed. And I was able to confront my own shadow, my own demons, my own dissent, take all the darkness, bring it to the light, and accept all those different parts of me that had been neglected and wounded, and bring them to the light. I can't fucking tell you how fast I was able to heal, because I accepted my responsibility. Now, other people, there's malevolence in my life for sure, but like that changed my life. And it was, I've told it to a couple of people, and they were kind of like shocked, because I was like, everybody, people like to tell you you're not responsible for this or that. And sometimes you're not, but like that just gave me the fastest path for healing. So, a couple of the implications that came from that was like, I was able to demystify my problems. So if I'm the biggest cause of the problems, right? Now, maybe I am, maybe I'm not, right? But if I take this axiom and say, well, I'm the biggest problem, automatically right there, I'm cutting myself off from an entitled stance of this person's the problem and that person's the problem. So that first implication was, I was forsaking entitlement, and forsaking entitlement brought me closer to the truth. So that was really helpful. By forsaking entitlement, the second thing that did to me was like able to go deep into my own psyche, and I got some help, and I've got a counselor who's been amazing. Claire Coffin is her name. She's been incredible. And she kind of worked this kind of process with me, and she's been amazing. And so that was really helpful to be like, have somebody else kind of like help me through that. So I got help. So that was the second implication. And the third was how fast the healing came. Like back to the shame piece. I wasn't afraid to be like, yeah, I fucked up. I did this, now I'm not to blame for everything in my life for sure, but like, I was able to heal so fast. And so one of the implications was I was able, and Cody mentioned it before, I was able to be present for my kids at a time where they were really struggling.
Yeah.
And so if I was blaming other people, if I hadn't gotten help, like I could have lived a whole fucking life of delusion. And there would have been a lot of people been like, oh yeah, fuck that, fuck her, whatever. But like the best implication was I was able to be present for my children, and I was able to protect them and advocate for them and get them to be safe and loved and secured. And so that was one of the biggest those are the three big implications for me of like accepting, just positing, as an axiom, I'm my own worst fucking enemy. Like if you wake up like that, yeah, it sounds dark. And I told this to a really successful client, and he's like, you fucking loved it, right? But he's like, but the counter to that is you're also your best friend. And I was like, yeah, so I am my own, then I can be my own best friend. And so I guess that was part of my story, Gabe. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, it was like radical fucking humility and to the nth degree. And the same client I talked to this summer, and he was like, I can't believe how much you've changed. You've gone from devastation to like peace so fast. And he's still going through a lot himself, but it was like, he's like, how did it happen? And and I was like, what, but the biggest pillar for me was being like, I accept responsibility as a man, and I want to get my shit together, and I want to fucking be a monster.
But that's how you become the hero in your own story. Yeah. You know, I've heard people say this before, and I do apply this to myself. It's like I personally have my own council of people. You know, I've got all these different people that I go to for personal development, and I have pretend conversations with these people in my mind based off of the personal development I've gone through with these people. But in the end, I truly am actually looking to, I know this sounds really egotistic and I don't mean it to be, but like I'm looking to myself as a future hero. Who is Cody 10 years from now? You know, ultimately, who's Matt 10 years from now? Who's Gabe 10 years from now? Because that is who we're going to become.
Yeah.
And if we're not mentally preparing ourselves for who that individual is, if we're just focusing on the catastrophes, the hypothetical catastrophes that are taking place in our life, we're never going to get to the hero of ourselves, which is ourselves, ironically.
Yeah, I agree. And I was like, if you want to personify shame, like let's call it like this, like dark force. I was like, let's fucking go. Let's go. Bring it. Like, what do you have to say to me? Like so I was able to kind of fellowship with my shame and let it speak, and being like, not afraid. I was so not judgmental about like my issues. And I was just like, I wanted to reverse engineer my shame. Like, so the key was like, and you've said it too, is like grace helps you do that. Grace helps you to be like, well, if shame isn't devastating, then it's a great teacher, right? Shame can teach you so much. But if you get locked in couch mode, it can teach you, shame can teach you where you fucking suck.
Yeah. Where you, like, this is where you deserve to be,
and that's where if you're eating Ben and Jerry's and you're eating pizza and you're doing all these things,
you're binge watching all your Netflix shows.
Yeah. What grace lets me do, it lets me just take the hit, because taking the hit.
But what do you do with grace when you're the only person? What do you do with grace when you're the only person that believes that you're? Think about it this way: you are the only person who's you're your own last hope for loving yourself. Like, there's no human being in this world that loves you. There's no God that loves you. There's just simply you having the like, I'm gonna choose to love myself, or I'm over it. I'm done. It's just like, like, what do you say to those people? Because there's people out there who don't believe in God. Well, they don't believe anybody loves them, and probably nobody does love them. Well, they probably are the outcasts of this world, truly.
Like, for me, it was like I had this mantra. Like, literally every fucking morning was this mantra, and I went through every day. So after, one of the things I would say is, what do you want? Like, simple. It's a simple question. And you and I talked about this. Like, what do you want? What do you want? And it's like, I started to connect with me. What do I want? Like, what the fuck do I want? And when you ask that question, you answer that question, and you start to actually have incremental progress in that, you are actually loving yourself. And like, if you say and I would say, I'm my own worst enemy, right? Why? Because I'm not actually pursuing what I want, right? I'm pursuing all these other things, but when I was able to confront my shadow and then ask the question, what do all these parts really in the end want? I was able to heal so fast. The other thing I would just throw in, because it's a little bit different than Gabe's story, maybe, and it's a little bit different than Cody's story, but not totally, is the idea of emulation. So in my dark moments, Elon Musk was somebody who was like, the dude was launching fucking rockets and landing them back down. What? The U.S. government hadn't figured out how to do that, number one. And Elon had sourced out every fucking material
to do it.
and the cost. He went on the metal exchanges and said, not only can we make this cheaper, but we can not waste material, bring that rocket up, bringing that down. I can't tell you how many times I just watched that rocket go up and land. That to me was a powerful demonstration of, like Gabe, what you're saying too, is what's possible. So Elon Musk, to me, I was able to emulate somebody. So I was like, I'm my own worst enemy. What do I want? Then I had this powerful emulation of somebody who was like doing shit in the world. Like I read philosophers, I read theologians, I read all these historians and all these fucking writers. But here's a guy like putting his fingers in physics and landing rockets, landing them down.
Yeah.
Using science and physics. So the power of emulation, I would recommend that for anybody who's in couch mode. Like sometimes it's like you can use grace, you can use a book, but sometimes it's like, for me, it was like, take some time and just emulate people. And that can be a very simple, powerful motivator. Be like, well, what do I want in my life? Well, this person inspires me. I like this person. I like what this person's doing. I like what this person is doing. I like what that. So it's a very, very simple thing, and that can lead to the same incremental progress. So the power of emulation is just like, to me, Elon Musk was a huge part of, like, for me, transcending. Elon helped me break the simulation. Like Kanye West, Jay-Z, Jordan Peterson, Elon Musk, Kanye especially. Kanye and Jay-Z like fucking changed my life. Like they said some things that were, I'm not going to go into it, but like I was like, wow. I had all these sources of people that I was emulating, but Elon Musk was the biggest. Like it got so interesting at some point. I would fall asleep like playing Elon Musk lectures because I wanted to hear what the man was thinking even in my sleep. And it changed my life completely. It really did. So I would recommend just find, if you're in couch mode, find somebody who's inspiring and like just fucking copy them on any level.
So simple.
So simple because like just they read books. Well, I'm going to read a book. What book? I don't know.
Well, that's so true. And I think that, there's a very common phrase in the business world, in the world in general, really. It's just where they say that the top 5 people that you spend the most time with are the people that you end up becoming.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for couch mode to understand that. It's just like, now some people are not even hanging out with anybody. There's some people that have 0 friends, period. Yeah. And that's one thing. Okay. Well, then start reading books. Yeah. Start listening to books. If you can't read, start listening to books, start watching podcasts, whatever. Get some influences in your life of people that want to better themselves. I think that's so deeply important. But if you got friends in your life, figure out who those people are. And by the way, this is the hardest decision I've ever made in my entire life. I want you to know this. Literally, the hardest decision I ever made in my entire life was having to let go of certain people that were in my life. And how to do that, I have no idea for you. I can't tell you how to do that. I just know that you need to look at your circle of friends, and then when you think about it deeply, write it down, whatever, think about it, write it on your iPhone, whatever, your Android. Who are the people that I spend the most time with? Top 5 people. Because if you do not figure out who those people are, if you don't figure out who your top 5 influences are, you will never know where to go. Because you will be influenced by those people. You will do what those people do.
Right.
You will. If those people do drugs, you'll do drugs. If those people love Jesus, you'll end up wanting to love Jesus. Yeah. If those people want to, go to the strip club all the time, you're going to go to the strip club all the time. It doesn't matter. If those people eat peanut butter, you're going to eat peanut butter all the time because those people will influence your life whether you like it or not.
So there's an emulation that's either positive or negative on some level.
Yeah, but my point here is that if you were to take those 5 people, identify them, figure out how they're influencing your life, what do those people love the most, okay? That's one list. The second list is what do you want for an influence in your life?
Yeah.
What are the top 5 people that you want in your life? What kind of an influence do you want from those people? Do you want those people to be influencing you to be the best basketball player of all time? Do you want those people to influence you to be the best, reading the most books of all time, or like whatever, anything, encouraging you to be in this particular religion, or
agree.
doing that, or doing this. Like,
I remember one of the interviews with Elon Musk that blew me away. It was this great interview. This Asian woman was interviewing Elon Musk. He's kind of, I'm piggybacking on what you're saying, and she was like, Elon, what's the secret to your success? He's like, he said, I try to like work, I don't know how many hours a week. He said, try to double what your competitor's working.
yeah, sure.
Like, sir. And I was like,
Really simple.
Yeah, totally simple. And he's like, and then he's like, typical Elon Musk. He's like, well, if you put it on a probability stream, and your competitor is working 40 hours a week, and you're
work
working
80.
80 hours a week,
Yeah,
and in a certain amount of time, you've doubled their output.
Right.
And anybody in that, so sometimes it's just simple. It's just simple things like that can absolutely change a life. It doesn't have to be Carl Jung. It doesn't have to be, it could just be a simple thing. I think that the element that's in all three of our stories is like incremental change. If you're in coach mode, whatever path you take, whether it's like Gabe, it's like a really intense, disciplined, which I fucking love. And Cody's like this Christ-centered, like loving relationship, right? Like, or if it's like me in this wonky, fucked up world that I was in, just being like, I am my own worst fight. Mine was like this existential.
Okay, we got to redefine
crisis.
Matt.
I personally love yours, Matt. That is something I really relate to.
Dude, it was just so helpful because I was like, if once I took
Dude, you're a genius.
man. Once I took
You
responsibility,
retain information on a level that is just no
once
one
I-
knows how to retain information like Matt does.
dude, thank you. Once I accepted
it's
responsibility for my shit, my life changed. And dude, I can tell you, I know some people who were going through divorce, like initiated divorce about the same time I did. Like that's part of my story is divorce and like healing from that. And like I know some people who didn't accept that principle. So we're in 3-4 years now, maybe 3 years. They're still at the same fucking place, blaming and blaming. They've lost 3 years, and they look at me and they're like, "How did you heal so fast?" They said,
But I think you have a huge, because I've known you for over a decade, and I think that if there's one common denominator I see in your life, I mean, there's multiple things, but one of the big things is you do have a very, very intense level of self-control. That's unbelievable. And in Gabe, obviously you do too, And this is an area this is why one of the things that I'm blessed to have, as you both are in my life as influencers in my life, is this concept of self-control, because that's something that I struggle with personally.
My thing, Cody, is honestly like I know what I'm capable of if I'm not self-controlled. Like it doesn't, when you know this, like we've talked, I don't have for me, it's like
Putting more skeletons
well,
in the closet.
my dark side is pretty dark. And I know that if I don't, I'm self-controlled, it's not as like a moral thing. It's more like necessity. If I give in to these things, the kind of shit my mind's capable of, so self-control for me is like,
but you don't have to be smart to achieve it.
you don't know. Well, it's like simple, but
It's just,
but
what
goes
was it
back
for
to-
you? Like, what was it for? I want to ask both of you this question. How do you obtain self-control?
That's a good question. I mean, self-control I have is like sitting with your shadow and like yourself. I know what I'm capable of. Like, I have darkness in me. I really do. People, you're a great guy, but I'm like, well, I have darkness in me. I have, and different senses. And so it's like, that darkness just, it's destructive to myself.
So you're aware
It's
of the
destruct-
hypothetical,
I'm aware of
the hypothetical consequences
yeah.
of the actions that you would hypothetically make if you did not
The
have
destructive
self-control.
nature for me, what it would do to me.
You
getting
actually take
locked
the
in-
time to think about that, because
Yeah.
the problem is people don't.
and my kids.
So that's
right?
part of your gifting, is you actually, and maybe not gifting, I don't know, because maybe that's something that we should all grasp. Maybe this is one of the most valuable pieces of information that we pull away from this podcast is people need to think about the actual outcome of their actions.
Well, for me, it's like a radical humility. Like I think of it that way, what I'm capable of. Like, I'm capable of things I'm like back to shame. Like I've done some things I'm ashamed of. And the man I want to be is I want to be a monster. And I want to be by monster. I define a monster this is
Yeah, in a
somebody
positive
who
sense, yeah.
promotes human flourishing on the
Yeah.
ultimate level for the people in their tribe.
Yeah.
And does everything they can do to mitigate suffering and chaos in somebody else's life in their tribe.
Yeah.
That to me is a monster. So it's a twofold thing. You're promoting flourishing, human flourishing to the people in your community, and you're mitigating suffering, and you're just like crushing chaos that is insidious in other people's lives. That to me is like
Yeah, it's the opposing monster.
that's
of
like
Mr.
the
Hyde.
ultimate sense of what masculinity is.
Yeah.
That's my version. And the dark side to me is like just the opposite of that. Like, so if you're giving into your own dark side on some level, you're promoting destruction and you're limiting human flourishing, and for yourself and for everybody around you. And I've had periods of that in my life, and I'm capable of that. I'm capable of that kind of thing, and I don't want to be. So that's for me where it's like a radical sense of like, yeah, I've got some areas that are really dark and fucked up, and I accept that. I don't push those away. I accept it, and I want to be remembered by people I love as somebody who brought flourishing into their life. And so that drives me to be more self-disciplined than I otherwise would. I don't consider myself super self-disciplined, but like so that's kind of the motivating cause, is like in the end, when I die, back to death. My grandfather used to say, he's the one who took me to the coffin, right? But the last podcast, he always had this deathbed philosophy. He always would say to me, you're going to die someday and you're going to be on your deathbed, and you're going to always look back on your life. And he's going to say, that is going to be the most profound moment of your life, 2 minutes before you die. And he would just say to me, like, let that, because there's no going back, right? You can be on your deathbed and be sorrowful and be like, that's fine. But if you're on your deathbed and you're full of regret, who could I have been? You're fucked.
Yeah.
Because you can't go back. If you're on your deathbed and you're like, I hurt this person and this person and this person. Now there's hope and there's forgiveness in that, right? But on my deathbed, I want to be able to say like, back to Christ, this idea of Christ being like this ultimate chaos killer. Like, I killed chaos and I brought flourishing to my girls, to my friends, to my romantic partner, to hopefully my spouse someday. Like, I gave them a world that was as chaos fucking free as you can get it. That inspires me. And I know the only fucking way to get that is self-control. If you can't regulate your own emotions, and I struggle with it, you can't regulate your own emotions. Really dear friend of mine has talked about like her said something one time about male partners. I never forgot. Very profound. If I can't have a male partner who's better at handling trauma than me, I don't want him.
It makes me wonder if
And I was like, shit. Like,
Yeah.
Like, wow, what a standard for mating. Like, and the only way you're going to be able to shield a woman or shield somebody you love from the trauma of this world is emotional regulation. I'm in. I want on my deathbed, I want to be that guy. And I know there's capabilities, there's capacities in me that on my deathbed, I could have so much regret, and I don't want that. So that's what drives me, I think, on some level.
So Gabe, how do you deal with self-control? I mean, because to me it's just like, and I just want to point this out really quick. For my personal struggle, from a personal standpoint, is like, you got the cookie dough, as Gabe, metaphor literally would say, the cookie dough. For me, metaphorically, the cookie dough. I got my own cookie doughs in my life that serve more dopamine than self-control than the rewards of actually self-control would.
Yeah.
So it's just like I got this experience where I'm like, okay, I could go to this cookie dough, for me metaphorically, whatever it is. Or self-control. Well, self-control doesn't sound as good. That doesn't give me a dopamine release as well as the cookie dough does. So,
can I interrupt just quickly? Because it's coming to my head.
Yeah.
I know Gabe's got to say, I hate the idea of being rooked or tricked. I fucking hate the idea of having the wool pull over my eyes.
Yeah.
I despise that. For some, it's the Wallace in me, I think. That
Right.
Freedom, pro-libertarian. Like, the idea of being tricked pisses me off. The idea of being stuck in a dopamine loop, that you're losing your life.
But some people don't have that same mental capacity.
No, I understand
where
that.
they're able to look at things further down the line like you are, where you're just like,
I just hate
the
idea.
outcome. Yeah.
I just hate the idea.
I hate it too. But
that
how do you
was-
deal with the people that have to? This is the reality of
grace,
most
grace.
people.
It's how
Most
you deal with
people.
them. It's grace.
Most people are not thinking about. They're not playing this out in their mind. How this is all going to go down. Okay, they're not. They're all they're doing is like, I'm very unhappy.
Yeah.
Cookie dough sounds fucking good.
It sounds
you
awesome.
know, like it sounds
Yeah.
really good
I
to me.
think-
Self-control. That sounds like just going back to
Horrible. Yeah.
painful
The-
experiences.
The way I look
like-
at people like that and you and I talked the other day,
and it could be cookie dough, drugs. It
like-
could be sex. It could be anything.
I think
It's just
I
like,
think religious thought is the most tyrannical type of thinking that there is.
Okay, but
So-
that's a whole nother conversation we got
but
to bring
it is,
up.
But it's
yeah,
relevant
but like
here
that's
because it creates.
I want to hear Gabe explain.
Creates shame.
Yes, it does.
Right.
Yeah.
So my answer to that question is grace.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yes. But a lot of people here that are listening are probably atheists, or they probably don't believe in Jesus,
Yeah,
or
but
they
even if
probably
you're
don't
an
believe.
atheist,
I mean,
the
like,
concept
all
of
three of us
grace-
have different opinions on how we believe
Right.
spiritually
But even if
to
you're
some
an
degree.
atheist, the idea of grace is a compelling idea.
That is the compelling thing. Yes.
Forgiveness.
All right. So, with that being said, Gabe, how do you deal with self-control?
I have 3 points for this. I'm going to talk.
This mezcal
One-
is strong. Fuck.
No, I this is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. So,
Wait, hold on. 3 points.
3 points.
I got to pee before you go 3 points.
Yes, you do. Go
All
for
right,
it.
hold on.
And he was so anxious to hear your answer.
I really,
He was like,
please
he was
don't talk
being such an
about
asshole
any
to
of
me.
those 3
Basically saying,
points
"Stop
until
talking."
after I come back.
Go
talk
pee.
about whatever.
Okay.
I'll be back.
Hilarious. He
You want a
pays more
snack
than
or something?
I do, which is
What? Yeah, give me some chocolate. It's in my fridge.
snack
It's
hilarious.
in the cheese drawer, actually. Don't ask.
Amazing. Hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um, So Gabe,
Yeah.
he's going to the bathroom. Let's hear your 3 thoughts.
I'll
I'll fill him in.
Yeah, the first one is again another thing that I wrote about this week. It's been a really intense week. Is to name your monsters. This is how I deal with this. This is Cody's question is how do you understand and how do you deal and create self-control? I think there's 2 ways to approach it in my life. I've found one is you have to have a very strong motivating reason. Then you have to have a very practical way, and then third you have to have a way to connect the 2. And that's where my 3 points kind of come in. So point 1, the motivating reason is actually the exact same motivating that you have. I'm not proud of a lot of the things I've done. And I am
Thanks, brother.
welcome back,
Do you guys
Cody.
have to pee at all? I mean, it's amazing to me that it's amazing
surprisingly
to
no.
me.
So
All
to
right.
jump into the 3 points, I was just starting with Matt. There's this framework I have for this. In order to understand and develop self-control, one, you have to have a very strong motivating reason. We'll put that over here. Very strong reason why. Then you have to have a very practical and simple setup system. And then having those 2 things is not enough. You actually have to have a way of connecting these. And that's why I have this system. That's what I kind of do. So my practical reason why are my very deep why is creating self-control necessary is very similar to Matt. I have done a lot of things that bring a lot of shame. I know what I'm capable of, and we talked about it a little on the last podcast, there are months of my life that are missing where I know what I'm capable of. And because of the multiple personality disorder, the dissociative identity disorder, there's months of my life that I'm missing. And had no control during those times. And during those times, some of the darkest areas of my shadow, of myself, were revealed. And I knew what I was capable of, had no control, and no memory. So to this day, there's gaps in my life that I don't know what happened. And that's that nothing rocks your core more than that, in my experience. That so very similar to Matt. Like I know I have a very strong, very clear picture of what will happen if I don't have self-control. Having that laminated picture or laminated paper in the shower that I read once a week, that is something that reminds me of why this is important. That's something that reminds me, brings me back, because life can be really fun and relaxing. You can get in that dopamine hit, and then you just let the self-control slide because you don't remember this is important, right? So that's the why. The practical way, or actually I'll go to the next one. So connecting that to the practical is something I wrote about this week, and it's naming. I call that naming your monsters. We've used monsters in the context here of like as a good way and a good thing, and I actually really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. In this context that I'm referring to monsters as the thing that creeps and crawls in the night. I'm talking about the thing that's horrifying and that's terrifying. The thing that you're ultimately scared of is naming that. And one of the things that people, they get stuck in this dopamine loop, right? Oftentimes, and I speak very much from experience, right? Like I say, I was addicted to cookie dough. Like I speak from not my only addiction either. I speak from experience. Addiction is more often than not, and I would say almost always, bred out of some avoidance. And usually it's an emotion. Whatever you're avoiding, you're going to something else to try and fix. And sometimes that's usually an emotion, right? We look at
that's the reason why you're continuously addicted to something, is because you're avoiding something.
I 100%. And the reason I say that, one, personal experience. Two, I have read, and I haven't read all the scientific literature. Like I'm not going to claim I'm an expert, but what I have seen, and I've gone deep into the subject, addiction tends to be based out of an avoidance. And that avoidance it's an avoidance of an emotion. You have that emotion could be loneliness, your avoidance feeling lonely, or that emotion could be it could be, well, where I talk about in Name Your Monsters piece that I wrote, the avoidance is the unknown, the emotion of just an unknown emotion, something I actually experienced a lot this week, where something happened or something in your life happened, and you haven't processed it, and there's this hovering unknown. Now, whatever this unknown is becomes significantly worse the longer you avoid it. Why? Because the unknown can be anything. And then all of a sudden it becomes the worst case. It becomes the monster, the worst possibility. So when you're avoiding this anger that you have, when you're avoiding this hatred that's built up, when you're avoiding this loneliness, this crippling loneliness, when you're avoiding whatever emotion it is, you're avoiding it because you're typically scared. There's unknown. We don't know what it likes. We're afraid that it'll take over. It's going to completely take over us. We'll get lost in a spiral, or we're just afraid because we just don't want to feel it. And so we avoid it. And then oftentimes we don't know what it is. It's usually this unknown. But we know it's bad. It just gets labeled general bad emotion. So we avoid that bad. And the more we avoid that, the bigger bad becomes, until bad becomes a monster. And then that's when addiction starts. That's the cycle that often happens. And so for me, as a very practical way to avoid that, to avoid avoiding, I start with the why. I get really clear on why self-control is important. Then I start with I have a system for organizing and naming emotions, to say, okay, I am feeling something weird. I don't know what this is. Here, I will follow this system. I'll follow this guidebook to figure out what it is, because I know if I let this go, it will drive me into the very thing that I'm avoiding, or at the very thing that I'm terrified of, right? It'll drive me into this life that I know it could be if I'm not careful. And then 3, you want something super practical. Not only do I have a system for that, you also want and Matt could talk a lot about this, I think, on a different podcast, a different episode, but very practical systems on creating habits. I don't think I have a huge amount of self-control. I just have self-control in spurts. And I can create a lot of self-control in a very short amount of time, enough time to create systems and organize my environment, organize my triggers, my associations, set up my world, just enough self-control to set up so that it runs. And then I'm like, put my hands off.
There's a feeling that we just desire to go back to that cookie dough. You know, we just desire to sit down and just eat the cookie dough. You know, like it could be because we're so stressed out. Like I got kids, I got a couple of kids, you got a couple of kids. I'm sure there's been times in your life where there's been an immense full amount of stress that has been produced from raising those kids,
especially
that have
like
brought you to the
essentially
place where like
I just you know what I mean?
or being a single parent,
pretty much.
Yeah, you know, it could be like maybe people, you know, I don't. My whole point is that, or my question really is this: when you start to feel that tug to want to just go have some cookie dough, to just want to smoke that cigarette, to just want to go to that strip club, to just want to go and do whatever it is that really gives you that massive dopamine release that just makes you feel so good, but you know, for you subjectively is not healthy for yourself. What do you do when you start to feel that pull? You know, because to me, that's what everybody has such a struggle with, is they're like,
it's like
they're just like, I just want to just go, you know, just want to go do that thing that makes me feel so good.
I think,
you know, it could be anything.
Yeah,
it could be like, it could be video gaming. You know how much of an addiction
that.
there is to video game? Like people just want to like, I just want to go. I'm just going to turn on the game system. No big deal. Mm-hmm. Next thing you know, literally 8 hours into it, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. You're supposed to be at work for 6 or 7 a.m.
I love the word just temptation. Like
you're so tempted.
It's like it's such a great word,
and it's not like these things are really bad necessarily, but embellishing them to another level.
It's a great word, because the word temptation, I don't know the etymology of it, but it's like it gives us a word to identify a critical moment, and in that critical moment, you have this moment to choose. So you have this. It's just a great word. I love the word temptation because it's like it helps us to identify a moment of
but you can't reason. You cannot, in that moment, reason. You cannot reason that your future would be better without that.
I know for me.
You can't.
Oh, I know for me, like.
Well, you can, but you can't.
Well, that's part of getting a little bit of self-control. I remember going through some very intense emotions through the last few years. And like Gabe's talking about these, naming the monsters in a sense. Like Jung's concept of like shadow work was so helpful, because I would have like, say this concept of rage. You'd be so angry at what's happening to you, and you go through these things, and there's people are breathing. There's malevolence happening to you. For me, one of the things I learned, Cody, in that moment was to, like Gabe said, name the monster and befriend the monster. Mm-hmm. That changed my life, because I was like, I'm so angry, and I developed this concept of seat at the table. So I would have this little fellowship in my own head. So if I had this part of me that was just enraged, I would embrace it and be like, dude, sit at the table. Come. What do you have to say? And then as soon as I would do that, the rage could sit at the table and just be like, I'm so fucking mad. This and this and this and this. And then I'd be like, well, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? And then the rage would say, it literally would be like, I want this. Very simple. I want freedom, and I don't want these expenditures anymore. And okay, thank you for your contribution, rage. You're always welcome here at the table.
So embracing.
Totally
embracing.
And
that's a big problem, is that people don't embrace the reality that they have rage, or the reality that they have this
shame,
and they have that.
If you have shame in that moment, and I would bring. And I have on my Spotify, I call it Jung Seat at the Table. I have all these songs on there that have helped me in this last 2 or 3 years, to help remind me I don't know how many times I would have a new emotion. Like Gabe, I so relate to this. What Gabe was saying is like, I don't even know what this feeling is, but I would bring it into light, sit at the table. And the table concept, I won't go there, is this idea of communion. I'm not going to go there right now, but like come to the table and sit at the table and let's embrace this emotion. Like you're not bad. You're not necessarily good unless you're heard. So we're going to listen to you. All the other parts of my psyche that had already been integrated and were very present at the seat of the table, and they had their chairs. And I was able to, by saying I'm my own worst enemy, I let all my little shadow demons be able to come out into the light. And then I was able to say, well, what do you want? Like, we love you. We care about you. What is it? What are you trying to say? You know, what is it that you want? And then, okay, I have another part of me that's an intellectual part that can help you. And then the integration of those parts was fast and the healing was expedited because of I was able to integrate those parts and bring them out. And that I get, that's a lot of Jung's work is like.
So you're able to systematically figure out and integrate what Gabe would say earlier in this podcast is your why.
Yeah, your why. But Gabe said it really well. Like you have this emotion. Sometimes you have an emotion and you don't even know what it is. You're like in that critical moment you're talking about in temptation. You have this option of like pushing it back into the shadow or just being like, dude, come sit at the table. What do you have to say? It's this very open, wonky, fucked up reality. It's just like, rage, what do you have to say? Loneliness, what do you have to say? Anger, what do you have to say? Lust, what are you trying to say?
No, I love this concept of embracing.
And bringing it to the table. And
not being ashamed of the fact that those exist in you.
And then you get the answers, like lust, loneliness. What are you trying to say? Lust often is like, I want this deep connection and I want so much adventure.
People want adventure. They want
ecstasy.
attraction.
Absolutely.
They want people to be attracted to them.
So if you take lust and push it in the dark, right, it's always going to operate from the dark.
Right.
There's a quote Jung said, and I don't remember, but basically said is like something along these lines. Like if you push your shadow self and keep it in the shadow, at the end of their life, you're going to call it fate, but it wasn't fate at all. It was your choice to push this in the shadow. That's back to the deathbed stuff that scares the hell out of me. I don't at the end of my deathbed be like, oh, it was fate. But it's like, no, you were just never integrated. And you didn't let lust come to the table. Lust, what do you want? What do you want? What are you saying? Like, that's kind of a game-changing idea. Well, lust is like, I want this. I want ecstasy. I want adventure. I want passion. I want perfect. Well, let's see how we can get it. Then guess what happens? Lust is no more like, lust is a very integrated part of who we are. It's not an addiction. It's not a sense of shame. It's just one piece at the table. Now, at the table, I've got 20 other parts there. I've got the rational part that's saying lust, calm your tits, right? You're not going to have a threesome right now. Right? It's not happening, right? Like calm.
So
yourself.
what it comes down
but what
to,
do you want from that? Yeah, if you have all these parts of the table, like drinking ale and chilling out, it can all contribute to this like sense of like integration and like let's get what we want.
Yeah.
And
that
so
is beautiful.
Yeah, go ahead.
Keep going. That's fine.
No, and I think that helped me heal. And by saying I'm my own worst enemy was like I was able to open the door to the basement of all my shadows and saying, "Come on up, all you motherfuckers, bring it up, bring your hate, bring your lust, bring your addictions, bring your loneliness. Have a fucking seat at the table."
That's from that's what Jesus did.
Absolutely, that's where I get the whole idea. Yeah,
that's exactly what Jesus
that's
did.
That's where you got the idea.
That's where I got the idea. Communion.
So
communion is where I got the idea.
That's what Jesus did. People don't believe that. People are like, "Oh, got to live up to it."
The whole concept.
No, he actually invited them all over to have party.
It was a mixture of like Carl Jung and Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
it was
this entire process.
But it wasn't this concept of Jesus going around and doing all these things. It was more so he was inviting them over and having conversation with them and being like, no.
The only people Jesus didn't get along with their self-righteous.
So the idea is the more you suppress this stuff, the more you're open, the more you're actually probably going to be screwed in it. Like you're going to be in it.
The more you take that part of you, push it into the dark, the more operative it becomes.
It will become operative in your life. Absolutely.
Well, yeah. And it will it's like back to this.
You're
whole-
trying so hard. You're like, oh, I'm just trying not to drink. I'm trying not to drink. I'm trying not to drink.
Instead
and the
of
next thing you
saying-
know,
saying-
you drank the whole
saying-
fucking bottle.
It's like,
It's
come,
gone. It's
why
just-
don't you fucking come out of the
Yeah.
basement, have a seat at the table, and tell us what the fuck's going on?
Right.
Well, I was abused when I was 7. I was this. I was this. Well, now we can deal with it. But if you push that part and keep it in the basement, it's just going to get bigger and stronger. And that's what Jung warned about. Jung was like,
No, there's some actually. I want to say this too, actually, really quick, because I mean, I think this is important. There's people who've been, and Gabe, you can probably relate to this too, but there's people who've been sexually abused. Okay, who are just like, I just need to be a better spouse. I've been sexually abused, but I just need to give sex to my spouse. I just need to give sex to my spouse. I just need to, and they just keep saying it and saying it and saying it and saying it. And it's just like, no, listen, bring the fact that you've been abused to the table. Invite that demon up there to have a conversation with what's happened here. And
befriend
maybe that,
it. Like literally befriend it.
Yeah, because guess what? That's happened to you.
Well, and something like
Like-
that, like is a deeper, like you might need counsel. You're going to
Of course, I think all
Right.
this stuff needs counsel to
I
some
agree.
degree.
But bring it to the light, and that's where communion.
you can't suppress it. That's the whole point you're making here. Is just
Communion-
don't suppress it. Don't try to beat it.
communion
Because-
was in the New Testament. It's like it was a covenant meal, right? This is where I get the idea. Is Jesus is essentially saying, now believe it or not, it just helps me. Jesus says to everybody, you have a seat at the table. The only way you don't have a seat at the table is if you're self-righteous. It's the only way you can't come to this table. And like when you have this bread and this wine, this covenant meal, you're accepted and you're loved. You're part of this bigger community, and you're wonky and you're fucked up and you're twisted, but you're so loved. You're accepted and you're cleansed and you're washed just as you are. That's a pretty powerful
Yeah,
thing.
that's a massive
the
statement.
only people
Yeah.
only people that are excluded, right, are the self-righteous, the ones who are scoffing, the ones who are judgmental,
The ones who believe
the
that
ones-
they've arrived ultimately.
and those
Yeah.
are the warnings attached to
That's a
the
dark
covenant
place
meal.
to be, thinking that you've arrived.
So for me,
Yeah.
the whole idea was I mixed Carl Jung and Jesus's concept of the Lord's Supper. And I was like, every time I had a feeling and I'd have these really powerful emotions, and I'd be like, welcome.
Yeah.
What do you have to say?
Yeah.
I love you. I care about you. What do you want? What do you have to say? And I need you part of my life. When you bring things out of the shadow, you're like, it's so freeing. Like say we talk about lust. It's like, come, like sit, like instead of like pushing and pushing down, like sit at the table. Now, what's great about this idea is like at the table, there are 20 other parts of you who are like looking at lust and being like, yeah, chill, but we're going to listen to you too. But we're going to keep everything in order. And this is Jung's concept of integration or individuation, which is my book is based on this concept of like all the parts in harmony. And when all the parts are in harmony, the process of healing is so fast. And you're able to do things, back to Elon Musk, on an expedited level. It's come so fast. But if you're stuck in shame, your concept, if you're stuck in that state and you can't integrate these parts, and like Gabe said, you have these emotions, you have to like name them. You have to deal with them and bring them to the table. Have a seat. Let's talk. And then
But this works for both victims and offenders, not just one or the other.
I think it's
because you are a victim to yourself in the midst of being an offensive human being.
yeah.
Like, and if you're not being, this works for both. It really does work for both. I mean, there's people out there that are like, I'm screwed because I'm
in a
just an
sense,
offender.
we're-
I go out and offend
in a
people.
sense, I would argue that we're all
predator,
victims and
you know,
we're all
whatever.
offenders on some level. Like on some level, I have done horrible things to people.
We've all done
and
horrible
have
things to
horrible
people
things
to
me.
some
So I think it
degree.
works for. I mean, I just think for me, it's like
Even if it's just like some kind of, just, you know, you're just humiliating somebody. You know, it
So
can be humiliating.
I can very much speak to exactly what you're referring to, Cody. If you don't mind me just jumping in here, how much of this can I say? So I've shared on this podcast that I, through the abuse, had developed like multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, right? So with that, I have people that I'm very close to have started working with people in different churches and then in general and saying, okay, who here has gone through abuse? We can help literally call it an integration process. And I've actually went through this process. I've learned a lot of the tools from it. And to take Matt, the reason why I'm so surprised to hear it is because what you explained, I had to do that practically. You did that in your head. I had like through picturing people coming to the table, I had to do it with the different personalities that I experienced. And it's the exact same process. I had personalities that are incredibly, let's just say, incredibly sexual, and that could go either way, pro or con, and have to come to and literally invite them in and say, okay, what is the need? Every part, and it all goes based on this one assumption that I think you and I are both making. Every part of you is meeting a need. There is shame. We attach shame to different parts of us because we feel like that part of us shouldn't belong. It doesn't belong. It's not serving. It's not doing something good. But Matt, you and I have operated under an assumption, and all of the people I've personally worked with, as well as people I know that have worked in this world, operate under this belief that every single part of you is there to meet a need. It's just doing it. Sometimes it's just doing it in either a fucked up way, or B, a way that doesn't serve you or serve others in the moment. And it's just a matter of addressing, okay, what's the need that's getting met that you're trying to meet, and can we meet that need in a different way? Can that part of you meet it in a different way?
Exactly. Yep. And if you have all these other parts integrated, right? So at that point, you become Jung used the concept individuated, right? The Christian concept is the word sanctification, right? Depending on your community, there are different words that describe this kind of phenomena of like being whole. There's a Hebrew concept, and I love the word, is shalom, is like peace. And like, and the Apostle Paul would often start out, grace and peace to you. And this idea of peace being this integrated sense of not only internally a sense of like harmony, but this person who is harmonious in the inside then has the ability to be harmonious on the outside. And that person has the ability to, back to Cody's concept of, be gracious. Why? Because I've dealt with shame. I don't come from a self-righteous standpoint. That's why we won't go there, but why I think religious thinking is one of the most tyrannical types of thought there is, because it's so shame-based.
Oh, right? It's what's divided and created so many different
and if you
tribes of people.
And if you bring all of your if you make all of your monsters friends, you hug all of your monsters, they actually can bring a rate of healing and innovation in your life that you never thought possible.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. I believe that with everything in me. Yeah. And I know that to be true because it's happened literally in my life where I've had those negative, monstrous people come up, and you're just, and you literally embrace them, and you say, you know what, I love you. And that's that. Yeah. And just, it's amazing, their response, their demeanor, everything is just like, somebody that, like, like,
no, it's true. Somebody did something to me the other day, and I was surprised at my reaction, because I was like, I can be a little reactive. So I was like, they're acting out of pain. What's their pain? And as soon as I was able to think like that, it was really, I mean, we can talk about that from a neuroplastic standpoint. I won't go there either, but like in my brain, because of this process, I was able to, like, people's behavior toward me, I was like, they're reacting out of some kind of pain. Maybe it's unidentified pain, maybe it's something but it changed my relationship with their behavior toward me. And I was able to, like, you could use the word gracious, you can use whatever word you want, but I was closer to reality than when I just react to their behavior. So their behavior response to me was XYZ. I'd be like, respond to their behavior, versus being like, back to what you're saying, Gabe, there's a need underneath them. And a lot of people have these shadow selves that are unrecognized, but intensely operative. And so it just gives you can be a more integrated, gracious person, and a person of shalom and peace, or whatever word you want to use, when you interface with other people. And you can be like, they're operating from a sense of pain or hurt or something's, and it's like, it's a very freeing stance. And I'm not always like that. Don't get me wrong. Like I still can be reactive to people's reactions to me. Stop that, or don't do that, or whatever, but it was a different place to be like, this person's in pain and they're coming from a position of pain. And I was able to do that because I was able to integrate all of my struggles and pain and be like, have a seat at the table. So you start seeing other people who haven't, you maybe gone through that process, or because it's a scary process to do. And like you said, Gabe, there's lots of complex psychological dynamics at play, the dissociative identity. There's a lot going on there. That's not just like, it's a lot going on, and trauma
You can't
work.
single it out to one specific
trauma
thing.
work and this kind of work. It really needs skilled practitioners or some, I don't know.
No, but the more personal that grace that you bring to that individual, the more personal. And I mean, like, if you actually pull that person aside, you pull that person aside where no one even knows that that's happening, that you're actually pulling that person aside. You're giving the undivided attention and being like, just whatever it means to respect, honor, and love that human being, whether you guys have the absolute most, opposing points in life.
Yeah.
You pull them aside. There's no public,
Right.
No one's seeing this happen. Okay. This is you and that other individual. And you're just like,
Yeah.
whatever that
Absolutely.
is that you got to do to bring that goodness to that human being,
Yeah.
that will absolutely revolutionize their life, period.
It changes everything. It's like, I remember I've had my fight and wrestle with Christianity and Christ, and we have this weird relationship, but it's like, I remember taking a break from church, just being like, fucking stop, like, just done. And then reemerging. And I'll never forget, like, I took a couple years break, and like the first service I went to was communion. And that's what really got me thinking about the table. And I was like, this is such a profound concept that there's probably in other religions too, but this idea of like this covenant meal where everybody's included, except for the prideful, except for the self-righteous, except for the people who are judging. Like, come to the table, and you're accepted and loved. And I was like, well, if God, like, if you want to use that idea of Jesus Christ himself befriending the prostitute, befriending the leper, the marginalized, the outcast.
Well, it's the father-like mentality.
Why shouldn't I do that to myself?
Yeah.
Right. Like, Jesus was bringing in the darkness into the light. He was touching the leper. People are like, what is he doing? He was going to the prostitutes, and he was going to these people who are stuck in their sexual sin, and people who are stuck in their religious sin, and just being like, he was bringing people to the table. And I was like, he's bringing people to the table, and I'm not willing to bring my own stuff to the table? Like, that's silly. So that's when I started really thinking about, like, I need to start bringing my own stuff out of the darkness.
It's the father-like mentality. You think of the story of the prodigal son. Everybody thinks about that story is about this guy who goes and just squanders his father's inheritance that he was given to him.
Yeah.
He goes out and just destroys everything. His father's like, here's your inheritance. He goes out and he just destroys it. Mm-hmm. And then he's got another son who goes out and he doesn't destroy the inheritance, but he just lives next to the father. He's just, but like this idea of like, we need to be the father. We need the person. So when that son comes home, then that daughter comes home, the father is throwing off his sandals, running to that human being, embracing him and throwing him a party, and then still like loving both sides, loving the guy who's sitting next to the father the whole time and just living next to the father and being that what you would call a righteous human being. But then you got the person who is just squandering everything. And the father's still embracing that human being too. Like, it's just, it's this mentality of like, there is no being perfectly self-righteous. There is no being, like, coming back from being rebellious. There's just simply just, it sounds really hippie, but just like loving,
It does,
just truly just
and
loving.
And even if,
period.
And even if you're like, you're an atheist or an agnostic, or no matter where you are on the spectrum, or a different religion altogether, like repression, suppression, and shame go sideways every time. They go sideways every time. So I don't care what faith standpoint you are, or atheist, or I mean, you could have secular psychologists come in and talk about shame, and its a manifestation is devastating, and all that kind of stuff. So it's like
We're at an all-time high with this in our culture, though. All-time high. I mean, like to the point where there's going to be an emotional recession in our own in American culture. I can't speak for the whole world, but I'm just saying, like for the United States of America, like there is an all-time high in this division of the two. Like that's just messed up, man. And it's going to come down to having to be a recession, an emotional, spiritual recession to actually, like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's going to destroy.
Well, it is, I think, on some level. And I think you see it in the back to kind of go full circle in our first podcast, right? Like suicide. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
literally, metaphorically.
I kind
everything.
of talked about this kind of this gamified mentality of like people like unplugging their games because when there's shame and unidentified parts and like your sense of like, I've lost this game, I'm over, like, yeah, I mean, I think you see it, in my experience of why I started writing is, going to the hospital and seeing so many teenagers in the psych ward who are like suicidal. And I was like, what? Like, how is this happening? So it's, very disintegrated culture we live in, I think, on some level.
You always see strong emotions on both sides.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking explicitly politically. I'm talking no matter what's happening here. In this idea that we invite all of us to the table, it goes for this as well. And we have these strong reactions, inviting those reactions to the table and saying, like Matt, you just said you started writing because you were going to the hospitals and seeing these people and these girls, and it led to this, I imagine, this confusion, probably this anger, probably this, at least that, if not a lot more. You had an option to take that and say, okay, I'm going to let that spiral me and become bitter, or take that and say, okay, I am going to invite that to this table.
It's
and
true,
then
yeah.
now that it's invited to the table, I hear it out. How can I help? What can I do? And you wrote the book. I think the book is a beautiful, practical application of this exact process.
I can't wait for this book.
Yeah, the whole book is literally about accepting self and then moving forward from that, really. I mean,
I think that is where we should end.
yeah, I agree.
I love it.
The world